Garret Wing, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is such a treat for me because I've been following you on social media for at least 2 years. When did you first start posting on social media? Yeah, I just thought of that. Do you
I
remember?
think about 4 to 5 years ago, same time that we started the civilian dog training business, I said, I don't know why, but I was like, hey, wife, literally grab the phone and let's just stop document this process because we had to film the content anyways to give to the owners to show them like, hey,
Ah,
this is the progress of your dogs. And I don't know what possessed me to do it. I just said, let's just hey, let's start a YouTube channel and see what happens.
and
And
how
then, I
many
mean,
downloads
literally,
later are you? Like how many
yeah.
million?
Oh, I don't even know. Downloads, I don't know, hundreds of millions or getting close to a billion or something. It's a lot. But we have 2 million subscribers on YouTube. We have 3.5 million on TikTok. We have maybe a little over 600,000 on Facebook, over 500,000 on Instagram. So all combined, getting close to around 7 million subscribers.
God, that's amazing and good on you. That's so cool. But and we'll talk about that later too. But I wanted to start out with last night I was prepping for all this and I saw you on your podcast. And I got to ask first, is the podcast just YouTube or are you going to blast it out like on all different platforms?
All platforms, we're going to make it available there.
What's it
Yeah,
called so people can listen
the
or
Garret
watch?
Wing podcast, just my name,
Okay.
Garret Wing.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And the
highly
focus of it is going to be a lot of law enforcement, canine related, some military stuff. But obviously, my biggest background and what I love is the law enforcement community, and even more specifically the canine guys and gals.
absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. So looking forward to that. And it's just on YouTube right now, right?
It's on YouTube now, which is I think the best platform to see it because we spent a lot of time and effort to make it visually appealing.
It is. You have a
Um,
nice studio and everything. It looks
oh,
good.
thank you.
Very
Yeah, I mean,
professional.
multiple camera angles,
Yep.
high end, all we're trying to hit the ground running like,
Yeah.
we're playing with the big boys. We may not be a big boy yet, at least not with our podcast, but I wanted to make everything as visually as appealing as possible. For those who are familiar with the Sean Ryan show, we took a lot of inspiration from his show. Um, as far as the look and the feel and the way the podcast presents itself. His specialty is more like special forces veterans. That's how he kind
Yeah.
of got his podcast started. And
Okay.
I'm like, we're going to do the same and tell the untold stories of police officers.
Outstanding. Very good. So yeah, I was watching it last night and you were interviewing your dad on the podcast. And I thought that was so cool. How was that? I mean, was it surreal? I mean, everybody wants to know about their dads and the moms and all that, but nobody sits down and actually asks those questions.
Yeah, so I would say if anything, it was different. I was really looking forward to it because I mean, obviously, I have a lot of respect for my father and the work he's done, and he's a pretty humble guy and is not the type to go around bragging or telling stories about anything. It's hard to even get stories out of him. I find some of the coolest stories when we get together with some of his old friends from back in the day, early on in law enforcement, and they have the stories. Unlike, I was going to say, very much like my father. I don't know if I have selective memory, but we don't have the best memory. Like I inherited that from my father. So his friends will come and be like, Gordon, you don't remember this? He goes, oh yeah. I think some of it's he forgot. And other ones he's like, yeah, I'm not sharing that with my son because he's gonna get the wrong idea and go out and do something silly. Cause big difference between police work in the 80s and 90s
Oh
and
yeah.
now. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was super cool. And we're going to go back to like your childhood and all that kind of stuff later on in the show. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I would not have guessed that Garrett was a descendant of a surfer dude. Your dad grew up in Hawaii. I was, you knew how to surf and all this. And I'm like, I would not have guessed that. Not in a million years.
yeah, it's funny. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, he used to be like a surfer dude, then it's like a sailing bum. And we actually had his his friend of probably 45 years, 50 years on the podcast. He was our last guest.
Okay.
Name of Michael Foreman, 50 years in law enforcement, still in it in a roundabout way. He's involved in the SWAT roundup and NTOA and all kinds of stuff. But to hear stories of, he's like, man, I was trying to get your father to be a police officer for like 5 years, but all he wanted to do was go around sailing and be like a beach bum.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's what I want to do right now, but hey, maybe later. So as of today, it is what, July 16th. And, obviously a few days ago was that deal with President Trump, the attempt assassination. And we're talking about canines today. So it popped into my head. It's like, hey, you know what? How about canines in the Secret Service? You were a police officer, sergeant, lieutenant with the Miami Police Department, correct?
Correct, for the City of Miami Police Department. Yep.
Okay. So you were with the city of Miami. Did you have any touches with the Secret Service regarding their canines or any experience with that?
No, I mean, I've worked with the Secret Service. I've been on a couple of details when we'd have the presidents come into town, but mostly as an officer, a supervisor, just assisting with like inner and outer perimeters. Um, and I dealt with Secret Service on everything except dog stuff. Meaning, we
Okay.
would train with any and every agency. We had bomb dogs, but no, the Secret Service. I don't think they have like a very large canine unit. I could be speaking out of my ass, but it's not like when I think of high speed police canine work, do we go, oh, we should probably cross train with Secret Service? Not at all, because they're
Right.
not getting the action. And I think they rely very heavily on local law enforcement to fill that void when it comes to sweeping for explosives and stuff like that. So yeah, anytime the president would come into town, our entire canine unit, at least the guys with the bomb dogs, would be pulled for that detail to clear it and sanitize it. And no,
Okay.
and so like when you go to the issue there with what happened with Trump, it they don't have a place really as far as now that I'm thinking on it, because things change. But
Right.
the first thing the dogs would come in to do is obviously sweep for explosives
Yes.
multiple times. Then
Absolutely.
they're sweeping the vehicles that are coming in. But now, I mean, this is actually still fairly new, is that we have what we call gun dogs now, dogs that are able to pick up on the smell of a firearm. I won't
Hmm.
get into details on exactly how they do that, but I haven't heard of someone using a gun dog to search for guns on a person. They do have what we call vapor wake dogs, which again is still a newer concept, maybe 10 years old at the most now. They're using those in airports. Those are bomb dogs who originally bomb dogs were used to sweep like buildings and vehicles. Then they
Yes.
found a way to use a bomb dog to kind of canvas an area for person born IEDs.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
so I could see them maybe deploying a vapor wake dog, but these are very expensive dogs. The training is you know much more difficult to get a dog to do that because the dogs have to work very much independently. And you have to trust the dog. But I mean, looking back on it, I don't normally associate Secret Service with canine. And we talked off camera real quick about the only incident that I can think of in history where Secret Service got to use a canine dog to do anything of significance was, I believe, during the Obama era. They had a White House like fence jumper. The guy jumped the fence, and they sent, I think, one dog, and that dog didn't do anything. Not surprising. But the second dog nuked the guy, which is very surprising. Like I remember hearing the story, watching the videos. It's hard because it's like pitch black out. You can kind of see
Right.
shadows. And it's like, wow, that's surprising. And the reason it's surprising is in order for these dogs to do that type of work and succeed in the work, they need the work. And I
Oh,
don't know how many fence jumpers they get on the regular at the White House. I think it's few and far between. And that's
right.
what I'm saying. It's no wonder the first dog did not engage. And it's kind of surprising the second dog did handle business. So good on them for making that happen.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that the Secret Service is a smaller organization. It's not super huge. Most of their work is in financial crimes, actually. At first it was counterfeiting, and that's kind of going by the wayside because people don't usually use a whole lot of cash anymore. And now it's more like financial crime stuff.
Yep.
They do a lot of that. And obviously, any kind of threats, against the president, they're the ones who are going to be investigating that. But as far as security details go and protection, it's very, very difficult to get the job of like inner perimeter with the president. Outer perimeter, yeah, they fill and, it's not always, like the same team, and they'll augment with local PD, because
Correct.
I've done it a million times. So has every good cop that's ever worked in a big city anywhere. It's like, okay, you're standing on that bridge for the next 5 hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing like glamorous about it. You see the limo go by, the motorcade, at 100 miles an hour. And it's like, oh, that was kind of cool. Yep,
Yeah,
there
and
he
I think
goes.
that plays into it a lot. The first thing I thought about when this went down was, and they brought it up, when the last time something like this happened was what, like 85 with Reagan?
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, well, that is a lot of downtime. That is a lot of what keyword being complacency. It's I think it's hard to stay sharp and kind of have that. I don't know what the word would be, but mm, first thing that comes to mind is like the PTSD.
yeah.
Like you could be a retired street cop, but if you did enough time on the street, you're still sitting. It just happened the other day at a rest. Yesterday, my wife, we went to a lunch, and I have two young girls now, and they were
Yeah.
like jockeying over who was going to sit where. And I put my foot down. I'm like, I am sitting here because
Oh,
I need to face the door. You know,
absolutely.
but I would say when you haven't had an incident since 1985, complacency is going to come in, and I think that played a big part in it. People
Yeah.
are sleeping on the job.
And that's the thing, one of my best friends, another sergeant that I worked with for years, the president was in town and he was coordinating with Secret Service. And he's like, God, you have one of the most boring jobs in the world until it's not boring.
Yeah,
And he said, you're a glorified security guard. Yeah, you're not going out like doing police stuff for the most part. And unless you've done police stuff, these most of these agents haven't run down an alley, after an armed person at 2 o'clock in the morning or jacking people up that, have, a bag of dope in their pocket. They haven't done the street stuff.
perfect. Yep.
So if you don't get those reps, the only answer to that is training. And you can inject stress, you can inject certain things, but there's nothing like the real thing.
Of course, yeah. And then you do wonder how much training they get post academy. Like, are they really running? Like, I would love to know, when's the last time they ran a drill like that? And
Yeah.
do they get that extreme? Because I always go back to training with our canine stuff. And for us, both for the human and for the dog, it's to make it as realistic as possible. I just wonder when's the last time they would run a drill where they're like, okay, there's someone standing there and shots are ringing off, and how quickly can you put that target down? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Because I also
conversation.
think their schedule's hectic too, right? Because
Oh, that's the thing. It's like,
yeah,
okay, today I'm in Chicago. Okay, now I'm in Milwaukee. The RNC is going on. Oh shit. The president is going to be going, to Boise. Who knows where
yep.
they're going to be going,
Yeah, I
so
don't think they get a lot of time for. It's not to point fingers or blame. I almost feel bad for them that they got everything going against them. The complacency is there, and then I'm sure there's a big lack of training for
yes.
sure.
And experience, and
Yep.
so that's tough. And I'm not poo-pooing anybody, but it's a conversation for another day. But you got one job, and that's what an epic fail is an epic fail, and that's what happened. But
Yeah.
as long as the supervisors don't start pointing fingers, and I guess it's already started talking to some of my friends in the Secret Service, and it's like, again, they depend heavily on local law enforcement.
Yep.
And if they start poo-pooing and it's like, oh, we're the best and you guys suck, well, you're not going to be welcomed with open arms the next time you come to our, place of wherever. So,
Yeah.
all right, I'll leave it at that. But so I wanted to ask you about, you left a secure job. You were a lieutenant for the city of Miami PD, and you were what, 17 years into your career? 18?
18 and a half when I left.
18. Okay. That's a huge risk. Cops
Yeah, very.
normally don't do that. They run out their 20, 25, 30 years because that's usually when you're maxing out your pension, and okay, then if there's a side hustle or another job you want to do, you do it then. But you kind of jump ship. What was going through your head when you did your final sign off? And I remember that video still to this day, you did your final sign off over the air with your radio. What was going on in your head?
Well, so it's been a roller coaster ride these last 5 years. And just to bring everyone up to speed, I was 18 and a half years in with my law enforcement career. I was a police lieutenant. I'd been a police lieutenant at that point for years, maybe 5 years. I'm horrible with timeframes, but very secure in my position. I was actually the commander of the gang unit in our special investigation section, which is like a dream job to
Oh
be up in our
yeah.
SIS. Yeah, it's very hard to get up in SIS. And here I was, driving around unmarked car, plain clothes, can basically make my own hours.
As a
I
lieutenant.
was,
Wait.
yeah,
As a lieutenant, you were doing that?
yep, plain clothes,
Oh my
unmarked
God.
car.
That's
Yeah.
unheard of because most places, when you're a lieutenant, you're kind of chained to the desk. That's unless you're like in a real specialty unit, and those are few and far between.
Yeah, I was blessed. I was really living my best life there. Great time in my career. Like I said, overseeing the gang unit, which was, we call it tactical investigations. One minute we're kicking down a door, serving a search warrant, working with all the different federal agencies. We had partnerships with every single one of them. Most of my guys were detached. I I really had it made. Um, but the business for the last, at that point we're about 3.5 years into business, and the business was just booming. That business being, um, it started with just boarding and training, so training of pet dogs. Actually, it started with law enforcement canine training and consulting. There's not a lot of money in that, because we say for every police dog that needs training, there's probably 10,000 or 100,000 pet dogs that need training. So a
Sure.
lot more customers, we should say. And so we started doing pet training, literally just one dog. And then because of the quality that we were providing, and combined with the social media following, long story short, you fast track 3.5 years later, we are now just in high demand, we should say. We were literally turning customers away. We're just to the gills with dogs. And then we are now started our online dog training courses, meaning we were maxed out on how many customers we could handle in person. So
Yeah.
we started basically filming the training we were doing to show folks literally all over the world, because now we have subscribers from all over the world, and they're saying like, I want you to train my dog. And I'm like, I can't, I'm booked out for 6 months, but hey, you can watch this course, and for a fraction of the price, you can actually train your dog the same way we train it. We've had crazy success with that. So the business just was demanding so much of me. And just to get to the point, I got where I was making more money in the business, and the business was requiring a lot of my time and energy, because maybe at that point we probably had about 12 plus employees.
Yeah, that was my
So
next
I'm work,
question. Yeah.
yeah, full-time
Wow.
job there. Yet I also have a full-time job as a police lieutenant, the commander of a unit. And again, it's a pretty high-speed unit. We are,
Right.
and this is really where it came to a head. It's bad when my sergeant is calling me saying, hey, LT, you know, that briefing is happening in about, or it's happening right now. We're meeting with the DEA. And I was like, which case is this again? Because we had so many cases going on.
Sure.
He's like, yeah, bro, this is the case where we're going to buy a kilo of Coke and like 2 guns. I'm just roughly something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So anyways, it's an important case. This isn't a little nickel bag of dope.
Right.
We're buying firearms off of a convicted felon, and we're also, dope is involved, and it's high stakes, and there's multiple agencies, and I'm the commander of the unit, and I had to make a decision. This happened multiple times, whether I break away from my desk. As a lieutenant, we do a lot of stuff at the desk, but sometimes we got to be
Absolutely.
out there with our guys. This is one of those times where I should probably be out there with my guys, but we're doing these multiple times a week. So, and it's not, I had full trust in my sergeants to handle business. But man, if something goes wrong, I need to be there to support them. And anyways, long story short, they're like, hey, LT, we're doing that thing. Do you want to be there? And I'm like, man, I got a call in about 30 minutes, something with my business, having some issue with my business that I need to
Oh
handle.
boy.
I can't be in two places at once.
Right.
Or I'm on the scene of a search warrant, and I'm taking business calls. It's not healthy. It's not
Yeah.
good for my business. It's not good for the boys and girls that were working under me. It's not safe for them. And it was just push coming to shove. I was agonizing over this decision for about 6 months.
Yeah.
When should I leave? If I should leave, how should I leave? I was trying to find a way to stay, because even though I was 18 and a half years in, I was only 3 years away from a retirement,
Yes.
meaning, I wouldn't have been retiring at 100%. I would have been retiring at around 66%. But
Yeah,
hey,
but still.
it's
Yeah.
not bad. Yeah.
Right.
And so I literally was just doing the math, speaking with coaches. I had business coaches. And this is the interesting thing. I was literally asking anybody that would listen. But on the one hand, my business coaches are saying, Garret, are you an idiot? You should have left 2 years ago. Let's go. Mind you, these are guys that are high net worth, make millions of dollars a year. And they look at, I'm like, yeah, but I'm walking away from $120,000 a year job with a pension. They're uh, like, you could be making so much more, to them.
Right.
Then I would ask someone like my father, who's 32 years in, retired, living on his pension, very happy with his retirement. And his wife, my stepmother, also retired, living on her pension. And I would ask folks like that, or people in my department of my rank or close to retirement,
Yeah.
and they all said the complete opposite. What, are you, an idiot? You're going to
Yep.
walk away from a retirement? And they would basically say, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Then I had my business coaches saying, look at us. So I was super torn right down the middle. Nobody could answer it for me. But anyways, I kind of just put pen to paper, did pros and cons, and really it came down to two things. It was like a financial decision, of course, but also what we haven't talked about is my family
Yes.
and how much stress. I was not seeing my family at all. I was working, mind you, when I say a full-time job with the city as the commander of the gang unit, it's beyond full-time. We were 7 days a week, basically 24/7, always on call.
Sure.
I was glued to my phone just for that. At any, how it goes, any given moment of any given
Yep.
day, it could be, hey, we're doing this warrant. Hey, we just got in a car crash, all kinds of
Yeah.
craziness.
That popped up. This popped up. Blah blah blah. Right.
Yeah, and then 7 days a week running a legit business. At that point was probably uh a seven-figure business, right? So anyways, I was I'll say something was gonna break. I think I was breaking. So I was like, but I'm tough, I'm like, I'll tough it out for the next 3 years. I can do it. I knew that. I said to myself, I can do this. I'll make it. But then I really asked myself, but will my kids? Because at that point they were probably around 3 and 5 years old, and
Okay.
they just weren't seeing me, or they probably weren't seeing the best of me, meaning I just
Sure.
was stressed and tired all the time. So anyways, I made the decision, and here we are. It was a wild decision, super risky, super freaking risky, but I don't regret it for a minute. And other than, I miss the camaraderie, I miss some of the fun stuff we were doing. And then actually I could tell you the one story that really was a nail in the coffin.
Sure.
I was able to take FMLA because I needed time to think.
Oh,
But
you
more
were.
importantly,
Wow.
I was able to take 3 months FMLA. My wife was actually dealing with a medical condition at the time,
Oh. Okay.
and nothing too serious, but I was able to take advantage of that and basically take 3 months off, no paycheck. I was like, what is it like to get no paycheck from the city, and
Mm,
what is it like to dedicate roughly full-time focus on my business? And I did that for 3 months, and it went by like this. Obviously, we were able to do a lot for the business to grow, but what I'm getting at is, well, my FMLA ran out. Not ran out, but it's time to go back to work. No
right.
problem. And I hadn't made a decision yet. But I thought this would help me make a decision. 3 months
Yeah.
off. No, I was like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So many ifs, what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because once I walk away from that retirement, I can't just come right back. Hey, I changed my mind. Can you hire me back and let me finish my retirement? It doesn't work that way.
See,
So
we've had guys do that where I
yeah,
work, you know, and 99% of the time, oh, maybe not 95% of the time, it's I've got this awesome business opportunity, blah, blah, and it's BS.
yep.
And
And they come
or
back.
and they come back and it's up to the city's discretion. And obviously the longer you're separated, the more difficult it is. And usually like within the first like 2 or 3 months, it's a rubber stamp. It's like, all right, welcome back. Then after I think 6 months, you lose all of your seniority.
Yep.
You start
Starting all
from,
over, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to go back to the academy. You have to go back for like training. But people were like, yeah, I didn't really factor into, oh shit, I got to pay for health insurance now. Things like that. And there was, I don't want to say hidden, they just didn't do their homework. And
Yeah.
obviously you did.
I did a lot of homework. And even after doing all the homework, I didn't, what finally made the decision for me is I came back, first day back, right back into the swing of things. Phone call from my sergeant. Hey, I said, hey, I'll be back tomorrow. Bring me up to speed. What's happening? Oh, great, LT. First thing first, tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. briefing in, the hood, the projects.
Yeah.
We're going to be going after a guy that's done a couple of armed robberies for Rolexes. He's using a high-powered rifle, AR-15. We'll be there with the county, and I don't remember if it's ATF, but some federal agency was there, I think. And they want us there as support. We're just there to back him up because the guy's like a known gang member, something like that. So I show up at this 5 a.m. briefing. Not my favorite thing to do, by the way. I'm not much of a morning person.
Yeah, me
But
either.
anyways, there I am, and this is the part of police work that I don't miss. And that is the kind of and I never was like this. I was never the kind of cop that like would finish a call and then would hang around and smoke and joke for like an hour while calls were holding. I couldn't
Oh,
do that.
sure.
I've always been a worker. So as soon as we finish a call, I'm back in going to the next one. Like I like to see the screen clear, and
Sure,
then I
sure.
like the screen clear so that I could go work and find like a stolen car or something. I just
Right.
had the worker bugging me. So here we are for I'd say 5 a.m. brief. It might have been 4 a.m. It's early. And everyone's just hanging around, smoking and joking. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, can there be some efficiency to this? And so, anyways, that's what started the morning. So while they're out there literally just, hanging out, I don't know what they're actually waiting on to have a briefing. Everybody's there.
Yeah.
I'm in my car answering work emails, not police ones, business ones,
Yeah.
catching up on business. Because mind you, there's nothing else going on. And so finally the briefing starts. And this is where I actually come to find out with more details of the case. This guy just did a lick like the day or two before, so he's definitely still armed. And I'm like, I was looking at my sergeant's next to me, super squared away, tactically sound guy. He's a supervisor in SWAT. He's one of the reasons we picked him to be on our team because that crap we were dealing with.
Yeah.
I wanted a SWAT guy on my team. We had several. So we're hearing the details of it and come to find out it's the county's going to be kicking down the front door on a third floor apartment with a guy armed with a rifle. And I'm like, looking at my SWAT guy, I'm like, you thinking what I'm thinking? He goes, yeah. He goes, where the hell is SWAT?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, this is stupid. Why are these guys, no offense to the boys and girls on that team, but you're not SWAT. This is a SWAT call out all day. You
Sure.
got the search warrant. He's armed. This should be a SWAT call out. Long story short, but I'm like, it's not my scene. We're here to support. It is not my job at any point to interject. And it's too late now. What am I supposed to do? Say, we're not going to help you because SWAT's here? All the
Sure.
more reason we're going to be here to help you. But this is dumb, dumb, dumb. It was a horrible briefing. They didn't talk about like emergency routes, contingency plans. It was just very much thrown together. Complacency. That we're coming back to that word. It was like, we've done it before. We're so good at what we do. Nothing bad could happen. Whereas I was always paranoid. I was always thinking worst case scenario. You got to plan for
Absolutely.
the worst, hope for the best. But anyways, here we
Yes.
are. And I'm going to this thing. And then as we're driving into this place, it's one of those places that you can never find it. You can't find it. It's like through a guard gate, down, there's no signs, it's tucked back away. And then when you get into the apartment, it's a monster apartment complex. And I know this is a long story, but the point is when you finally get in there, we're literally on the radio going, which building is it?
Oh
Everything's
God.
dark. There's no
That's bad.
numbers. So all I was thinking is if someone gets hurt and we call in the cavalry, it's gonna take them forever to get here and then forever to find us.
Right.
So we get in. Oh, and then this is classic. The actual commander, who I think was a lieutenant, and it's not to talk bad. I'm going to tell you the truth. This is just bad. He's supposed to be commanding this whole scene. He's in the stack. He put himself in the stack. He was like
Oh,
second man in the stack. I'm like, well, how much commanding are you doing if you're kicking down the door? Point
right.
is, if shots ring out, he's going to be the first one to either get hit or be in the pandemonium. And and it's hard because I'm very proactive. The last thing I really want to do is be that half a block away manning a command post when my boys and girls are kicking down a front door. But that's my job. That is my
Right.
job, so that when they're in the thick of it, I can call in the resources and actually do command and control from, without getting shot at. It's hard to command and control when
Correct.
bullets are going over your head. So I'm like, this is effed on, I can't tell you how many levels. So I already made the assumption. I have worst case scenario running through my mind. Knock, knock, knock. Police search warrant. Shots are going to ring out. The guy's going to shoot right through the front door. The whole team's going to get hit. They're going to be pinned down. And then I'm going to be in charge of this catastrophe, right? And I'm literally just my first day back. So again, all this buildup, I'm literally, as they're knocking on the door, we're taking up rear security. We're all exposed. The guy's got an elevated position. There's no elevator. Like, you got to walk all this gear up. It's
Oh,
just a tactical nightmare. Everything goes fine. All this buildup, everything goes fine. The guy gives up. They make entry. They arrest him without incident. Great. Again, but just by luck, there was no skill or tactics there. But all I kept thinking to myself while I was there is, why am I here? I've like, my heart's not in it anymore. Like, you can't be half in it
no, you're
doing
right.
job like that. You can't be on the scene of, you can't be letting your guys go do a kilo dope deal, but your mind is, you're literally on the phone with like a client or a customer talking about training their dog. It's not fair to anybody to be half involved in either thing. And that was kind of like, and I was just thinking about my kids. I'm like, here I am. Here's the headline. This is what I was thinking, man. Literally, I'm in a position behind a tree, like, please don't shoot at me today. I just not. And then I had already made the decision. This is the crazy part. And I think you've been there. We've all probably been there as we're getting near retirement. The last, you're kind of, I don't know, but aren't you freaking out maybe that last week? You already know you're retired. You're signing your papers on whatever. You're like, is this my day? I'm only got my last day on the street. I just don't want to get shot today. I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my career up to here, but like, this is my last day. And that's what happened is I had already made the decision by the time we were leaving that briefing. I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. My heart's not in it. I can make more money doing other stuff. I put in plenty of time. It's a miracle I'm still alive today with all the crazy stuff I've been through. And I'm like, that's it. But I'm like, I have to finish this mission, if you will.
Sure.
And I was just thinking, man, this would be great. The guy busts out the window and starts taking shots at us with an AR. I'm like, aspiring dog trainer dies last day at work. I was like, man, I basically told God, and I'm not very religious, but I said, if I can make it through this one, I'm out, baby. I'm out. I'll sign my papers tomorrow. And that's what I basically did. I literally, as soon as that mission was over and they called all clear, I went in and checked on everyone. They said, you need any more help from us? Like, no, we got it from here. Perfect. Got in my car. It's maybe 5:45, 6 in the morning. I immediately texted my major and I said, hey, all's good on this operation. But I'm leaving. I'm signing my papers as soon as possible. He already knew that I was
Yeah.
having this discussion. So I said, I basically said, like, today was my last day. And then he called me and I told him, where I was at. And I literally was signing my papers like the next day or something. So again, a long story, but um, that was the nail in the coffin for me. And again, I don't regret it. Again, I still love police work. I just, like I said, can't be in two places at once.
Right. Oh, so your dad was a police officer, and I think your mom, stepmom was as well, correct?
My father, my mother, my stepmother, and my stepfather were all City of Miami police officers, and all
Oh,
put in
jeez. Okay.
25 to 30 years each.
What was it like growing up in a law enforcement family like that?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't know anything other than that. Some of my earliest memories were going to work with my dad or my mom. Take your kid to work day. There were times they couldn't get a babysitter, so my mom would work. She was a police officer, but she worked up on the communications bridge and like oversaw the dispatchers. So I
Okay.
spent a lot of nights up there, sleepovers up there. Um, it's
Okay.
pretty cool. And then my father would take me to events that he could take me to. I took my first police dog bite on a sleeve at around 8 years old at a demo. Um, cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
I I don't know. And I was a pretty good kid. I wasn't a horrible kid by any means. Um, so I, I just knew from a very young age. I would say around 16 years old was when I actually started doing actual police ride-alongs. My
Yeah.
my father, he fudged the paperwork. You're supposed to be 18. His sergeant, lifelong friend in the K9 unit, and you're not supposed to do ride-alongs with the K9 unit.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
made
You
it
never do.
happen. Yeah, midnight shift. He got approval from his lieutenant, and they're like, yeah, go for it, man. Because my father had probably been on 20, 25 years at that point. And
Okay.
and he's like, I'm gonna take my son to work with me. And so, I mean, I did like a legit ride along, midnight shift. Worst, my father had, that was the other cool thing. Perk. normally doing a ride along with patrol and you're stuck to an individual like zone.
Right.
He had literally countywide, and he had always 2 or 3 radios going. My father was a worker, so he'd have the county radio going. He'd have another radio just scanning for anything that was popping, and so he would just scan through like. And if he was already a worker, when his son's with him, he's like, I'm showing this kid a good time. So I'm
Sure.
literally
Sure.
day one, shooting scene, dead body, car chase, bailout, dog bite, etc. On day one, I was hooked. So I started doing ride-alongs with him as often as I could. Almost every week I would go, midnight shift, and same thing. He was always trying to like improve the shift from the week prior. Like, what can we get into tonight? So I saw some crazy stuff, even at 16 years old, dog bites and stuff. Dude, being on tracks at 16 years old, looking back on it, it's like, woo, we were breaking all kinds of policy, no
Oh
laws, just
yeah.
policy wasn't going to allow that. But whatever. I mean, obviously we were as safe as could be, but I was hooked, man, to see real police work, adrenaline rush. And here's a funny side note: around 3, 4 in the morning, everything kind of died down.
Yeah.
He would always take me to the fire station at the end of the shift and say, "Look, Garrett, I know that was fun, but this is what you really want to do. You want to be a fireman." Yeah. And at 16, 17, 18 years old, I'm like, he kept telling me the perks of it. You get to eat here, and you get to work
Yep.
out, wash your car, and watch movies. And we would go in the firehouse, and sure enough, these guys are eating. Um, I remember walking in, a guy's playing video games, and I remember telling my young self, like I told my dad, I said, "Dad, when I go to work, I want to work. I can play video games at home." And then I like want to kick my 18-year-old self back.
Yeah.
What a better retirement I could have had, Those firemen got it made, some of them. So
Now, your dad was obviously canine. Was your stepmom a canine as well?
yeah, she did canine for about 3 or 4 years at one point, but she was always in a high speed, like not on SWAT, but RID is one of the units, so robbery intervention, but basically
Okay.
plain clothes, the jump out boys, plain clothes
Okay, sure.
guys and gals going after armed robbers and homicide offenders,
So
and working
you
like
you were
picking up
surrounded
guys
by
with warrants.
dogs then as a kid. You were surrounded by police dogs
Yeah, so my
at home.
father was in canine since 81 and I was born in 83, so we
Yeah.
always had a police dog in the house. It was just to me like the pet dog.
Yeah.
Um, when it switched for me was around 8 years old when the I had to go hide in the bushes and take a bite, and the pet dog came in, and I was like, well, that ain't the same dog I know. He came in with a different look in his eye
Okay.
and bit, and I was like, oh, okay. And then again later on, seeing dog bites, seeing these dogs perform at competitions. Oh, we played hide and seek once, probably 10, 8, 9, 10 years old, and our police dog bit the neighbor
Oh
through the fence. Yeah,
no.
because he was hiding in the bushes. We were just playing
Okay.
hide and seek, but the dog goes, "Hey, I know this picture.
Yeah.
You know, somebody sweating, hiding in the bushes. You bite him." Luckily, it wasn't too bad of a bite because it was through the fence. He only got like a
Oh,
like a
okay.
little puncture, but
Yeah.
still,
Yeah, it
yeah.
could have been a lot worse. Yeah. Wow. So dang, so you grow up with, the police influence, with the dog influence. So it only makes sense that you just kind of progressed straight into it. How old were you when you went into the academy?
19.
Okay, so that was in Florida, obviously. Now,
Yeah.
did the city of Miami have their own like regional training center, or is it like I know Florida
Yep.
has like training centers and you go to and then you get hired by different departments. How does that work with Miami?
Yeah. So back then, and I still think to this day, you can self-sponsor,
Hmm.
and you can go to Miami-Dade Community College and attend their police academy, 6 months long, give or take. But I got hired with the city. This was during a big hiring frenzy. All the cops that they had hired in the 80s were now retiring out. And so this is around 2004 when I got hired, give or
Oh,
take.
okay.
And so we were the first class of like many dozens of classes for years and years to come, where they were cycling through 40 plus at a time. We were the first big batch coming through. Funny enough, like just in our 40, we had like 6 or 8 of the 40 that were in there were second generation police officers.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, and so it was a great academy class. A lot of great guys and gals in that class. And then I got into canine like as soon as I could. You had to do a minimum of 2 years. It's pretty much 2 years on the dot before you could apply for a specialized unit. And
Yeah.
I put in and got in. And so that started my my career there with the city.
So you're 2 years in patrol. Everybody starts in patrol. And then you went into K9 right away after your 2 years. I think that's pretty fast, actually.
Super fast. I don't know if I always recommend that. It's a case by case basis, but yeah. But again,
Right.
2 years in the city, you learn a lot. And I wasn't just I was working midnight shift in the hottest areas that I could. I wanted the action. Overtown, Alapata, jumping calls. Funny enough, the first squad I worked in, I don't even know how this works. The first squad I worked in was my stepmother was in that squad also.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, I
I
was
don't know.
my
I
next
don't know how they
question
allowed
was, did you ever work was the timing ever there where you worked with, like your dad or your stepmom or your mom?
all the time because with at least because at the time my mom was still just in communication, so she was just up
Okay.
on the bridge. But between my father and my stepmother and me, and always working overtime and picking up extra jobs, man, it was almost always a wing working. So and we would compliment each other's shifts, like, hey, where are you going? Okay, I'll be here. And then yeah, it was like 24/7 police work, because and I still lived at home with them. I was only 20 years old.
Right.
So for the first year or two before I saved up some money, I was living with them. So we'd either be seeing each other at work, catching bad guys together, or coming home talking about like what just happened and how we could do it. And what we'd be watching on TV, because we're weirdos? Cops. We'd just have
Yeah.
cops running in the background. We'd sit there eating, going like either talking about how great a job that officer did, or critiquing like, oh man, they're
Yeah,
very lucky, or they got to do a
right.
better job advising. When we would critique the hell out of each other, boy. My father, and I'm not just saying this because my father, but everybody knows him as a worker. And then my stepmother was a worker beyond workers, and I think she worked even extra hard to fill kind of his shoes,
Mm,
but also because she was a woman. I think she just had to try even harder to prove herself.
yeah.
And then I came in, and I same thing, man. I didn't just want to be known as, oh, that's Gordon's son.
Sure.
No,
I could
I
see
had to
that.
prove
Yeah.
my own worth, and it was very difficult to do that. And it's not to complain. It opened a lot of doors for me, but it also, people are like, I had to really prove who I was, above and beyond just the name.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you obviously, like I said before, you started in patrol. When did you promote to sergeant?
About 5 years in.
Okay. And how you didn't get a K9 right away, I would assume, when you promoted.
No, so I had to do my time on the street as a
Yep.
sergeant. Then I got into the problem-solving team, which is like elevated patrol, basically. We ride around in police cars, but we don't answer typical calls for service. We're
Mm,
designated. So I was in the Coconut Grove problem-solving team, and so we work directly under the commander of that area. I think the city of Miami has a pretty cool system. I'm not sure if it's done elsewhere, but the commanders basically oversee these neighborhoods, large neighborhoods like Coconut Grove, downtown, Alapata, you name it. Every major net area would have a commander, and basically that commander was the chief of police for that neighborhood. It's
okay.
beyond a neighborhood; it's a net area.
Yeah.
And so we worked directly for the commander, and we were their problem-solving team. So if it was burglaries or dope or robberies, you name it, we would be tasked with modifying our schedule. And to be on a problem-solving team, you had to be a go-getter cop.
Sure.
Putting out the numbers and just working, hardworking guys. And so I was a problem solving team sergeant for maybe a couple of years. And I'm happy to say that the commander we worked for eventually became the chief of police. We helped. I'd
Okay.
like to think we helped, make him look good. And he was
Yeah.
a great, that's a shout out to George Kalina. We made him look good, but he made our jobs easy. He was a great, great guy to work for, both as a commander and as a chief of police. And then at some point, I get the call to come back to Canine. They were doing a big house cleaning, so to speak, meaning
Mm,
there were some issues brewing. I was aware of them because my father was in the unit, and I think he had just recently retired.
okay.
And about 6 months later, um, having nothing to do with his retirement, but the city had basically had enough. There were some issues in the unit. The culture of the canine unit had kind of shifted in a weird direction. I don't want to get into details, but they were more focused on literally. I'll just tell you, they were doing MMA type stuff. This is big when like UFC is really getting popular,
Yeah.
and on training Wednesdays, they would practice doing MMA, mixed martial arts.
You mean instead of training the dogs?
Yeah, yeah, and
Well,
then
that's dumb.
here's another funny one. Like if you had beef with someone in the unit,
Yeah.
that's fine. Wait till training Wednesday. We'll have an MMA match, and you can sort it out in the ring. Yeah. So the culture was a little weird. I wasn't there, so I don't want to talk too much about it. I just heard what I heard. But the
Yeah.
point is, it came to a head between the MMA fighting, and they were kind of breaking some HR rules. You can't just have fist fights and stuff like that. It's not the 80s anymore.
Yeah,
And
true.
so they ended up kicking out the lieutenant, kicking out both sergeants, and then we had to come in, and they kicked out the trainers, a couple of trainers. Don't quote me on it, but
Yeah.
a big majority of the unit got the boot. Then they brought in me. Well, they brought in a lieutenant, former IA guy. Makes sense why they bring him in.
Yeah.
Very much by the book guy. And then they brought me in because of my experience, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. So I came in as the like head supervisor. They had no sergeant,
Yeah.
and we, for lack of a better word, rebuilt the canine unit. Made a lot of changes, brought it back to its former glory, and I consulted heavily with my father, like just going all the way back, like whether it was a training exercise or a point of contact or someone to train with or a training location. I'm like, look, I got the best resource here. I got 32 years of experience right here. Like, what Dad, if you could redo the unit, what would you do?
Right.
And so I took a lot of his advice, and then took it even many steps beyond that, really pushing the envelope in training and everything else. And I'm really proud of the work I did there.
Now you're a sergeant in the canine unit. Did they assign a dog to you? Because usually they
Oh
do
yeah,
not. Really?
hell yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I wouldn't have
Lucky.
it any other way. Yeah, no, we
You're
did that.
lucky.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there are some times where the lieutenant of the unit or the sergeant of the unit won't have a dog, or if they do have a dog, it's just a bomb dog. But we had working dogs. The sergeants were uh, we had apprehension dogs.
Okay.
Mine was a dual purpose apprehension and arc dog, and I would at every opportunity, if I could deploy my dog, I would deploy my dog. I led from the front. I'm not just saying that to be braggadocious. It's
Right.
just my nature. Like I told you, I got ants in the pants. I can't just sit at the command post and let someone else get in the backyard. So if I wasn't running a dog, I was running as a backup. Again, as long as we had another sergeant that could handle the command post and it made sense, I was on the ground with my boys and girls. I could not get enough. Even decoying, I decoyed more than anybody else in my unit at that time.
What
I
does
would just
that
run
mean?
it again. Get in the bite suit, kind of
Okay.
the lack of a better word, like the shitty part of being in canine,
Yeah.
wearing that stinky, sweaty bite suit, hiding in a shed in 100-degree weather or up in a tree, getting bit by mosquitoes and ants, and taking a bite from a dog.
Right.
It's not it's not fun for most folks. For me, I couldn't get enough of it. I loved I loved it. I just literally, when you say eat, sleep, and breathe it, that's all I did.
Okay. Now, when did you become a lieutenant?
Told you I'm horrible
You had
with
about 4 years on as a lieutenant. So your last 4 years, you were a lieutenant?
yeah. So let's say I was a sergeant for a good 8 years, maybe something
Okay.
like that.
Then you took the
Yeah,
test, you became a lieutenant. Now, were you cycled back to like regular patrol?
yeah. Right back to patrol. What they call a shift commanders.
Okay. Yep.
Man, that was a weird day because you don't get like a lot of it's not a lot of training. Not a lot. I think we did like a 2 week classroom kind of leadership stuff. It's all good. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But you get 2 weeks of classroom. I don't even think we shadowed anybody, maybe for a day or two. I don't even think that. We did that for a sergeant. I remember when I became a sergeant, I shadowed for like a week or two with a
Wow.
senior sergeant, which was very helpful.
Yeah, it
But when
is.
they said, as a lieutenant, mind you, I guess it makes sense because you've already been a sergeant for however long. They gave me the bars, 2 weeks kind of leadership class. And then I remember it was one of the strangest and most anxious, stressful days of my entire career was when I was rolling out of the back gate and I on day one as a lieutenant was the highest ranking person in all the land. Like I was responsible for everything. So,
Wow.
on afternoons and definitely night shift, which is of course where they put the new lieutenants,
Yeah.
you're in charge of everything. And I'm like, this is crazy. I think I remember calling my father like, Dad, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what the hell's going on. He goes, hey, just make your best judgments. That's all you can do. Just be smart. Man, what a cool time. And for those who don't know, like if it's a shooting, stabbing, car chase, dog bite, active shooter, you name the catastrophe that could befall the city that night, and it's the city of Miami. This isn't no podunk town. We have
Right.
murders and robberies, all day, every day. I remember pulling out the back like I am the shot caller. And at 2 a.m, you are not calling the chief to ask him his opinion. You don't even call the chief anything. The only thing you would do as a patrol lieutenant, if you had a problem, was call another lieutenant to ask for like, hey, what's your advice on this one? Which we did enough of for sure. But then they finally, years later, they made it a policy that you'd have to have at least 2, and I think even 3 uh, shift commanders on north, central, and south. But when I came
Mm.
out of the gate, it was me in charge of the whole city. And it's not to brag. I'm telling you, I was way out of my comfort zone. But what can you do? I mean, the best way to learn is just to do it. And so there you are. There were car chases going on. They're raising me like, is this a good chase? And I'm like, me, I'm like,
Sure it is.
let it ride. Let it ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the cool thing too. Is as a lieutenant, nobody could override me. There's no one there to override me, but a lot of responsibility. So, but I always let it ride as long as I could with stuff. And then I also took a lot of pride in training, and I think with all that great um, freedom that I would give my officers, I also demanded a lot from them.
Sure.
So I wanted the best from them.
Interesting. Because
Good
where
times. It's interesting. I just hadn't had to rehash these stories, and no one's ever asked me this stuff.
right. Yeah, it's interesting because how different departments do it. Where I worked, lieutenant was the shift commander. You're in charge of late shift, midnight to 8, say, and you've got like 3 or 4 sergeants. And on your off days or vacation or you're doing whatever, a sergeant sits in the chair. You'd call it, like you're sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
The second day, I'm a brand new sergeant. I went through a 3-week supervisory school, which there was good and bad. There's good and bad with all training. And the guys I'm working with is like, you're lieutenant tonight. And I'm like, I am? I'm like, yeah, I'm barely sergeant. Now I'm lieutenant. And this is, yeah, you're in charge of the district.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to sit in the chair because it's a
Mm.
shitty job. Nobody wants to be in the chair. Nobody, because as a
A lot of
sergeant,
pressure.
you were on the street.
Mm.
You were going out doing all the fun stuff. Whereas lieutenant, for where I was, you're stuck inside for the most part. And at night, there was the night inspector. It was either that was the rank, and we call them super sergeants, where, like you said, if there's a shooting, well, not just a shooting, but a homicide, a major fire, some big catastrophe of some kind, they would show up to the scene as like, you got everything you need, Pat? Yeah. All right, bye. It was, they'd show up, they'd give their blessing, and that would pretty much be it.
Yeah.
Or if a member had to get suspended or arrested, they would show up for that too.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the no fun part of the job. And if the inspector wasn't working, a captain would have to cycle. So a lieutenant was almost never the night inspector. So I'm surprised they did that to you.
Yeah. And then, like I said, when we were doing it, and they just only needed one, and the city was real short on resources, almost always short on resources and
Sure.
manpower. So it'd be one lieutenant overseeing ballpark, um, to 12 sergeants at a time, maybe 60 to 90 officers.
How big?
The span of control was
Yeah,
off. That's again why they changed
that
it.
is
Now
off.
it's
Yeah,
2 or 3 lieutenants. Because same thing, if you're tied up on a homicide scene up in the north end, and then there's a pursuit down in the south end, like you're it. So
yeah.
you were not in the office much. You were always bouncing from one scene to the next, and then your job
Interesting.
mostly easy job though. I would say easy job because you could do whatever you wanted. You could go wherever you wanted. You could go out there and chase bad guys if you wanted. If you wanted to take it easy and just sit in the office, you could do that, and barring some crazy stuff going on.
Right.
A lot of it was just as long as you had great sergeants working, boy, they did all the work for you. They did all the work, and then I was just the messenger between the catastrophe that was happening and then making really just decision making. That's all it
Sure.
was. Do we call out SWAT? Do we not call out
Right,
SWAT?
exactly, yeah.
Should I wake this commander up? It's 3 in the morning and let him know, or should I just shoot him an email and he'll see it in the morning? That kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. How many members were with the Miami PD back then? Do you remember?
It's always fluctuating between 12 to 1400.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. When I started in 95. We were right around 2000. That's a city of 600,000 people in Milwaukee. And when I retired, I think we were down to about 13, 1400. I mean,
That's a big drop.
our numbers are, I think it's even worse now, to tell you the truth.
It's what I hear. No one
It's
can hire
sad.
anybody.
Very, very sad. But hey, let's talk about dogs. That's what we're here
Let's
for.
do it.
All right. We're alluding to, the different jobs, the different dogs. What's the difference between, in police work? There's a patrol dog, a bomb dog, dual purpose, narcotics. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah. So typical is a dual purpose dog. You get a 2-for-1. That's a dog that is definitely an apprehension dog or utility dog. That's a dog that will track down bad guys, find them, and bite and hold is the hope. But they will also be trained in either explosive ordnance detection or a bomb dog or narcotics detection. In the last handful of years, you could also cross train your dog or have a single purpose dog dedicated to locating firearms. That's a new one. We call them gun dogs. Where do they use gun dogs? Search warrants. If they think there's a gun maybe hidden, a dog can find it a little faster. They'll use them in schools to maybe search lockers or book bags, find a gun. Also, that they're great for, hey, like you had a car chase, the guy bailed out, he had a gun on him. And just by the
Right.
time he caught up to him, he didn't. So you'd run the gun dog hard, but every once in a while, the gun dog would find that gun that the guy disposed of.
Yeah.
So gun, especially since these school shooting incidents, gun dogs have become a much bigger thing.
Oh, sure.
So, and again, gun dogs are typically single purpose dogs. So what's a single purpose dog? A single purpose dog is typically a dog that just does narcotics, just does explosives, just a gun dog, or a money dog. We also had money dogs. So money dogs would typically work in our higher end narcotics unit. Same
Yeah.
thing. They would be deployed at airports to hit on, let's say, suitcases, people traveling with a large amount of currency on them.
Oh, okay.
Also, yeah, on search warrants, let's say is a doper's house and you're expecting that it could be money, up in the drywall or
Sure.
something. You could run the money dog, and they would pinpoint on currency. So pretty cool. And what's great about they love having money dogs because the money that dog finds, you typically get to seize. So they pay for themselves.
Oh,
These
wow.
money dogs can seize all kinds of money. Like at the airport, it only takes one guy traveling with a suitcase with $500,000 to Barbados, and your dog hits on it. Well, you just made the city $500,000. You know what I mean? Or the task force. I'm trying to think if there's, and then of course we have missing persons dogs. You could call them single purpose. That would be like a bloodhound whose single
Okay.
purpose is to locate missing persons. Though some bloodhounds will also track suspects. It depends on the agency's policy. So that's really it: single purpose and/or dual purpose. Um, there are some. I was trying to think now. What you would never do is you can't have a dog that is cross-trained in dope, narcotics, and/or currency. And I'll give you a reason why. You're running that dog, and I'll give you one. It's a dog that's cross-trained. Again, this is hypothetical.
Yeah.
It's our narcotics dog and a bomb dog. So you are sweeping, and there's millions of examples of this, that all hypothetical. You're sweeping an arena because Trump's going to be there to give a speech. And as you're sweeping, boom, your dog alerts. Well, that should give you a pucker factor. Well, is he alerting because there's a bomb in this package, or someone, has a joint in there?
Yeah.
Is it a
Right.
joint or is it a bomb? Same with a vehicle or anything else. You can imagine where you're searching and the dog. Now, you could argue that you could potentially train the dog to give two different types of alerts, but we got to remember it's a dog. It's going to make a mistake. Imagine if it gives an alert and it's telling you it's dope, and then you open the package and it goes boom. So we never do that. You would never cross train a dog in different odors. It would stay in their particular specialty.
Now, let me ask you this. Well, two questions for you. One, what breeds are best for these specific jobs, do you think? I'll start with that.
Well, what you're seeing, the only thing you'll really see out there is German Shepherds, but more you'll see Belgian Malinois and Dutch Shepherds. Now, Dutch Shepherd is really just a Belgian Malinois with kind of different coat, different, slightly different personality, but basically
Yeah.
very high strung dogs. And it's funny too. I could probably reach over here and grab it, but in fact, I'll show you this. It's only
Okay.
right here. Give me a moment. This is a academy class or a graduation of police dogs from. I'm just looking at the photo. This is going to be in the 80s, I'd say late 80s, early 90s. Try to get it close enough that you can see. And it's German Shepherd, German Shepherd, all German Shepherds and a Doberman.
Yeah, I see the
This is
Dobie. Yeah.
really unheard, very unheard of. But yeah, back in the 80s, it was German Shepherds, maybe a random Doberman, random Rottweiler. Belgian
Yeah.
Malinois basically didn't exist as far as we were concerned. Now you started getting into the mid 90s, 2000s, Belgian Malinois would sprinkle in. So it'd be like 80% German Shepherds, 10, 20% Belgian Malinois. Now, if you see a graduating class now, 90 to 9,900% Belgian Malinois, even rare to see a German Shepherd.
Why?
Rottweilers got phased way out.
Why the
The reason
Malinois?
being
Yeah.
just uh, endurance, drive. They have the best way I can explain it. It's a 1,200 horsepower engine that you get in a Malinois, and
Okay.
a German Shepherd is going to be more like 300, 400, 500 horsepower,
Okay.
right? And so that's really it. They can work a little longer, more intense, but it depends who you ask. Because I worked both Malinois, both as a decoy, as a handler. I had a Malinois, and then I got a Shepherd. I'm not really partial either way. The German Shepherds are kind of smarter, and I don't even know if it's that they're smarter, but they actually take the time to think and figure something out.
Mm.
Here's the best example I give you. This will help you. If you were up on a hypothetical again, you're up on 1,000-foot cliff, and you got a tennis ball, and you got two dogs, and they're both ball crazy, right?
Yeah.
Got 11 out of 10. They give me that ball no matter what. You bounce the ball, you show it to them, you throw it off the cliff. The German Shepherd will run full speed to the end of the cliff and hit the brakes and go, whoa, and then spend the next 30 minutes trying to figure out how to get down. And if there's a way down, he'll probably figure it out, like a
Yes.
path or whatever. A Belgian Malinois, same thing. Throw the ball, Belgian Malinois will run, jump, grab the ball midair, and wag its tail the whole way down. It won't care, it won't think about it. It wouldn't regret that decision at all. Where you see it in practical application all the time is if you had a bad guy, both in real life or in a training scenario, we'd run these scenarios just to see what the dogs would do and kind of prep them for it. If you had a bad guy, let's say behind a desk or some kind of barrier, let's say a desk and it's in a classroom, a lot of chairs and crap, and maybe the bad guy created like a little wall. A German Shepherd would go in, and I'm telling you, 99 out of 100 times would go around and find a way around and bite the guy, like the smarter way.
Yeah.
The Belgian Malinois, 99 out of 100 times, will shoot like a rocket, bulldoze right through everything, bust up everything, and bite the guy. They don't think, they just do, which is
Okay.
cool. Yeah. I mean, pros
That's
and
funny.
cons to both of them.
Yeah. You know, as far as training goes, and I know you can't get into like all of it for various reasons, but my experience with the canines, and I was lucky enough to have one of my cops that worked late shift. She later segued to the canines, and she had the run of the city. That's one of the advantages of being a canine officer. And when she was doing reports or whatever, she would always go back to our district because that's what she was comfortable with. She knew the lay of the land the best, et cetera. So it was always a huge treat to have, Christina and Kenny, the German Shepherd, come by. And what impressed me was she never stopped training. There was always some kind of training. There was always some, and to the dog, it was play. Now, when you're training dogs, what did it look like your day to day? It's like, were you constantly training with this dog, or what did it look like?
Sure. I mean, so there's minimum requirements. I think we were requiring 16 hours a week of training.
Hmm.
or 16 hours a month. Don't quote me, it's been a while, but it didn't
Right.
matter. That was just the minimum. We were always asking for
That's like
above and beyond
formal
that.
training, right? With the other canines or whatever, running different
Yeah,
scenarios and
so you'd
stuff.
have to log your hours and
Okay.
submit them to state of Florida. I mean, that's how we did in Florida. So
Ah,
Florida
okay.
Department of Law Enforcement, you wanted to submit your records. I mean, and it was good too if you ever got sued or called into question as to
Sure.
what you were doing, you could always go back into your records and say, no, like, look how many hundreds and thousands of hours we have of training. And so it was a mix. We would train, and this is pretty much the mainstay across the entire nation, is that there's always one day a week designated, like in South
Yep.
Florida and a lot of many places, it's Wednesday is the training day, but in other states, it's Tuesday or Thursday or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
And that's where all the canine unit, would modify their schedule. You just got to make sure you're there on Wednesday training days. Why? Those are the bigger days where you're putting on the bigger training scenarios, tracks, maybe more tactical type training, multi-dog training, bigger stuff, and often cross training, which we did a ton of with other agencies, FHP, Florida Highway Patrol, Coral Gables, Miami Beach, Broward County, Miami-Dade County, to change, exchange tactics and ideas, and training locations is a big one. That's the biggest thing, is you got to expose these dogs to as many different environments as possible. And so that would happen every Wednesday, 10-hour shift. I'd like to get about 8 or 9 hours of training out of that 10-hour shift. And then every other day, you're still a police officer. You
Right.
still got to get, your tickets and your arrests and support patrol. But in your downtime, we were requesting, minimum 30 minutes to an hour of training a day, give or take, to help supplement. And what would that be? Could just be a little obedience routine. It could be doing article search, which is, like tossing out keys, or maybe a screwdriver, which it's like evidence recovery.
Sure.
Make your dog find it. Then some of us would go to the next level. We would train for competitions. So,
Mm,
hey, it's like with everything, the Pareto principle and police work and everything else. You could have 10 guys on a canine unit. One or two are your superstars training above and
absolutely.
beyond.
Yes.
One or two are like, yo, these guys are doing the damn bare minimum. And then everybody in between. So we had that too. And then as a supervisor, I'd have to go through and like really look at their training logs. I wasn't as concerned about their training logs. The training logs tell you one thing, but they'd also be fudged. What would tell me is when you show up on training Wednesday and I said, hey, get your dog, show me OB routine, down your dog, recall your dog. And if we see an issue, we're fixing it, or asking like, what's the issue, and coming up with a plan to fix it. And then we were passing certification once a year too. Every year you had to recertify with your dog to make sure you were up to
Oh,
snuff.
okay. Interesting. Now, when you're getting a dog, a handler getting their dog for the first time, obviously, that's your dog. It goes home with you. You're with them, 24/7. As far as like for us, we get them from very specific breeders, and they weren't puppies. They already went through like a kind of a doggy basic training or boot camp before we got them. And then,
Yep.
you just expounded on that training. It was the same thing with you, or
So it was when I was in the canine unit, we were getting mostly what we'd call titled dogs from Europe.
yes.
So these are dogs that are 2 to 3 years old, and I mean literally we call them Ferraris, turnkey. They were unbelievable, super high level of obedience. And what that is again, for the folks who don't know, over in Europe, they have sports over there, Schutzen, IGP, Mondio Ring, and it's civilians that compete at very high levels, training German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, really whatever, to compete in like protection sports. So tracking, obedience, bite work, blah, blah, blah. And so they
Right.
train to a very high level and they take it serious. It's kind of like how, maybe the best I can compare it to is how we like golf over here, right? So instead of golf, they're out there training dogs. They train these dogs up, they get titled. And once the dog's titled, it's like, there's not much more you can do with the dog. Like the dog's already hit
Mhm.
that level. It's already got the black
Okay.
belt. So then they'll sell it to kind of recoup some money and then
Sure.
reinvest and then train up the next dog for the next 1 or 2 years and try to title that dog, etc. So we would get those title dogs. And these dogs were, I don't remember the price, but like 15 to 20 grand, give or take. And we'd get them turnkey. Now, just because they were turnkey, they were sport dogs, is what we'd call them. You couldn't really just hit the street with them because they are used to training on the field, biting a
Sure.
guy in a suit, and to transition that into, and again, we'd call it like an active decoy, like guy running away. Well, that's very different than a guy maybe butt naked, hiding under a car at 3 in the morning,
Right.
that's high on crack. So we had to transition the dogs to that. But more importantly, we had to train the handlers how to handle that 1,200 horsepower machine. And
Sure.
funny enough, like 4 to 6 months later, when they finished training, it's weird to say this, but the dogs, when we'd get them first bought from overseas through the vendors, would bring them to us and we would get
Yeah.
to select them and pick them out.
Yeah.
Those dogs were in their prime, man. I mean, they literally were just titled, in the last couple of months or whatever. They're sharp as can be. And then we're handling these finely tuned machines to brand new rookie canine officers. It's kind of like handing like a 1,200 horsepower Ferrari race car to someone who's never driven a car before.
Oh, okay.
What's
Sure.
that Ferrari going to look like 4, 5, 6 months later? It's going to have dings. They're going to have messed up transmission.
Yeah.
The bumper's going to be not quite fitting right. And that's exactly what happened. Not physically was anything wrong with the dogs, but their training was kind of like muddied up,
Okay.
like because of bad timing and, anyhow. So their obedience actually was probably worse at the end of the training, but their
Okay.
bite work and their scent work and their tracking and their ability to find bad guys was better. And then we would spend some time, often not talked about publicly, but I don't know if there's anything to hide. We would dirty the dogs up the last little bit. Dirty them up meaning kind of prepare them for um a street fight. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. The boxer in the ring is probably pretty formidable. And then it's like, okay, now that you're a really high level boxer, right, in a sport, just like the dogs, you're great at this sport. Okay. Now I want to show you what it's like when the gloves come off and you're not in a ring and you're in a
Sure.
backyard and someone hits you in the head with a stick. What are you going to do? Right. Or the boxer gets taken to the floor. Or in this case, the dog who's used to biting a guy in the arm, the only thing available is a leg. And then after you bite the guy in the leg, he's going to put you in a headlock. What are you going to do, dog? And prep them for real encounter. So we call it dirtying the dog up, preparing them for
Okay.
street work.
I like it. I like it. All right, let's kind of segue a little bit towards civilian dogs. You know, the one thing that used to be a hot button, I guess it still is, where pit bulls and other banned dogs. Home insurance wouldn't, like insure your house if you had a pit bull. In the city
Yeah.
of Milwaukee, if you had a Rottweiler
Mm.
or a pit bull, you have to have a fence that's 6 foot tall. You have
Mm.
to, there's all kinds of restrictions. Apartment buildings, won't take certain dogs. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very hot topic. It's still very these things have been around. These types of laws and concerns have been around since I don't know, at least back to the 80s. I don't know because
Yes,
even the city of Miami had a pit bull law in effect that you could not own a pit bull. You could not reside in the city of Miami or Miami-Dade County with a pit bull. That I just bring
really?
it up because that just
Wow.
expired um like in the last 12 months.
Okay.
And then we're bringing it up like, should we redo it and what should we do?
Yeah.
But it's such a gray area, and I'll tell you why. The most recent ban that I know of that's high profile is the UK, and I want to say that went into effect like December of 2023 or February of this year, so very fresh.
Yeah.
And they banned the XL bully. Now they've
Huh.
already banned pit bulls, and I think they banned the
Oh,
pit
they
bulls
did.
back in the 90s. And they didn't just ban them, but they went through and like if you didn't register your dog and do this and that, they were it. And someone called 911 and said, "Hey, my neighbor has a pit bull and registered whatever." They'd go over there, confiscate it, and euthanize it.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
That's
they and
crazy.
there's some wild videos out there, like kind of very sad,
I'd be
where you're
so
seeing,
pissed. Oh my God.
yeah, exactly, police officers coming in with, I guess animal control or whoever,
Yeah.
and like with a search warrant, basically taking your family pet. And what's wild is
Oh,
it's not the breed, is what I'm trying to get at. Yes, I'll talk about it because I'm not a breed apologist, but there's some pit bulls out there that are the sweetest thing ever. And you
sure.
see this video of like they're coming in, and I just take one look. I have a trained eye. I'm like, man, that dog wouldn't hurt a fly. There's strangers coming in the home, and the dog's like in the corner, like, why are you all here? And you're like,
Right.
oh, that dog's getting put down like within the hour. This is sad. And
Ah,
the women, the mom and the babies are crying.
oh, that
And
would
then
suck.
what's funny is you look at it and it's like, but is that even a pit bull?
Right.
Is it a pit bull?
How are you proving it
Who's
in the first place? Yeah.
yeah? Who Who is there drawing blood from these dogs, especially back in the 90s,
Right.
and then doing a DNA test right then and there to tell you? And okay, what if it's 50% pit bull
Sure.
and 50% poodle?
Yeah.
What do you do? Now, they weren't doing that, but basically their rule is if it looks like a pit, it's a pit.
Wow.
And so they have these classifications. They did the same with the XL bully. That's what I'm getting at. How do you know it's an XL bully? What is it? Now, I have a pretty trained eye, but there's so many variations: micro bullies, XL bullies, regular bully, an American Staffordshire Terrier, which is like the grandfather of the pit bull. If I showed you an American Staffordshire Terrier, you'd say that's a pit bull. And I'd go, I see why you're saying that, but actually it's an American Staffordshire Terrier.
Wow.
Same thing like we take Miami-Dade, for example. You can't have a pit bull, but you can have an American Staffordshire Terrier, an Amstaff. But they literally look the same. In fact, Amstaffs are more intimidating. They're a little beefier,
Yeah.
blocky heads, cropped ears. They're bad looking. They're cool dogs. I've trained them. I love them. The one I trained is a freaking sweetheart. The one I can think of now. He's on my channel. Bentley is his name, sweetheart.
Okay.
Anyways, I could talk to you in circles about it, but it's one of those issues where I am not. There's a lot of things to talk about, but first and foremost, it's not the breed, it's the owner and the training.
Sure.
However, at the same time, when you talk about breeds like the XL Bully, Pit Bull, Rottweiler, German Shepherd, we'll throw them in the mix. Look, any dog with a protective instinct, herding background, guardian background. Now I'll bring in the biggest one now, Cane Corso. That's one of my breed of choice. Is what my channel is most known for. I own
Yep.
them. I train them. That's becoming a ridiculously popular dog, and it is 2 and 3 times more powerful and potentially more dangerous than, quote, pit bulls. Literally has the physical strength to kill humans, and not just could, has. There's documented reports. There was one just 6 months ago in Canada. 2 Cane Corsos killed a like 12-year-old boy.
Ugh.
They can do it. They have the power to do it. And so it's really, the problem is it's just the size of these dogs. They're freaky powerful. You start getting a 60 to 80 pound pit bull, that's a lot of pit bull. You get a 120 pound any dog, that's a lot of dog. But now
Sure.
we have Corsos, and now people are getting Kangles, Presa Canarios. There's this other breed now that they're coming out with called a North American Mastiff. How do you ban that? Because it's not even like an AKC registered breed. It's like it's a hybrid. They're
All right.
combining some of these things. So my point is, you can ban it all you want. They just come up with a variation or a hybrid, and how are you going to ban that? So it's a never-ending cycle. It all comes down to proper breeding, proper, selection of the right dog, and then training. I'm not just saying that because I'm a trainer, but damn, because there's some Chihuahuas out there that are completely untrained and nasty as can be. But what's the worst they're going to do? Bite you in the finger? They can't kill you.
Right.
And I also see, just again as a trainer, most people barely have control over their 30-pound, you name it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. So how are you
Or
going to control, an 80-pound pit bull?
or 130, 150, 160 plus pound dog. Now
Right.
180 pound boar bulls. They got boar bulls now. There's another breed, South African Mastiff, 180, 200 pounds. We have a guy flying in from Washington State to us here in Charlotte. He's going to be here Thursday and in 2 days, and we'll be training his boar bull. But, he's investing the time, and the money to get this
Sure.
dog trained. And then it's just crazy. But then I'm also like, do you ban guns? Is it the guns killing people, or is it
Right.
the person behind the gun? It's the kind of the same argument I say with the dog. Is it the dog, or is it the owner of the dog? So
Yeah. I go back to, first off, whenever you talk about this stuff, it brings out emotions in people big time. I mean,
yeah,
there's very, very strong feelings in both directions. And I grew up with dogs. We always had dogs in the house, everything from St. Bernards to miniature schnauzers. I mean, we had it all. And I am 100% agreement that it's how you treat the dog and how you train the dog. And a lot of people do it wrong, or they don't have complete control over the dog. But we had an in-service one time when I was a copper where somebody came from animal control, and the whole his like 1 hour block was about pit bulls. The regulations in the city, for pit bulls. And this guy is saying is like almost every breed will give you some kind of clue before they attack. The hair stands up, they show their teeth, they start growling, the ears go back, blah, blah, blah. He said pit bulls, They're like one of the only breeds that don't. They just go and just attack.
Mhm.
When their mind is made up and the car is in drive, they're just going to do it.
Yeah.
What do you feel
I
about
wouldn't,
that?
yeah, I don't think I would disagree with that. And I think I will substantiate why I think that's the word I'm looking for. Or most people who get bit by dogs are getting bit by what we call fear reactive dogs, meaning the dogs are very anxious, bad genetics, bad training, bad socialization, and out of fear. Like, and this is a great example. If you all own a dog, and a lot of people have this, or you walk around your neighborhood and you ever see a dog at the end of the leash barking its head off,
Yeah.
and it looks mean and ferocious, the dog's actually doing that 90 to 99% of the time. It's doing that because it's actually scared. It's just putting on a big show of force
Okay.
because it's actually scared underneath. Now, so what we would call that is fear-based reactivity or leash reactivity. And anyways, it's a whole problem on its own.
Yeah.
But those dogs are putting off a ton of warning signs because the last thing they really want to do is bite or fight. That's why they're putting on such a show. Then you have that rare, that 1 to 10% that's not fear reactivity, straight dominance. Dominant, hard ass dogs that what do they say? Like when you go into a room, don't be afraid of the guy that's blabbing out the mouth. Be
Oh
afraid of
yeah,
the guy that's quiet in the corner. That's the
absolutely.
scary.
That's eyeing you up. Yep.
Yeah, same with the dogs. Don't be afraid of the yeah. Be afraid of the dog that's barking. Yeah, of course.
Right.
But the real killer is the one that's like wagging its tail, looking at you almost with a smile on his face, and it's like, "Come over here so I can bite you." Now, why do they do that? Very strong, very confident dog. They don't want to. There's nothing to bark at. They're not scared of anything, and so you'll see other. Again, this is outliers where they're either doing it out of dominance, so they're attacking another dog because they're dominant. There's no barking. There is a bit of a display with a keen eye, and you can be trained to do this. You can
Yeah.
see a dog posturing, and but then the rare one. This is what I'm getting at with pit bulls. There's something that pit bulls have, not just pit bulls, but you see this trait a lot in pit bulls, and what I call misplaced prey drive. I haven't heard anybody else
Mm.
call it that. It's what I call it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't say like if you had a German Shepherd and you told me, "Dang, Garrett, anytime my German Shepherd sees a squirrel, he just fires off, chases
Yeah.
after that squirrel. No barking. They're not barking. They
Right.
get quiet and they run after that squirrel and chase it up a tree. And it's like it's their life mission to chase that cat or that squirrel. We wouldn't say that's a weird dog. We'd say, oh, it's just a dog being a dog. That's what they do. Well, something happened with the pit bull genetics back in the day when they were breeding them and raising and training them to fight each other. They have conjured up through genetics, you know, that these dogs, I've only seen this a rare few times. I mean, literally less than a handful, where a dog will look at another dog as a prey item, like
Oh,
how a dog would look at a squirrel. This
yeah.
pit bull, it happened to be a pit bull. It was a pit mix. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
And again, I love pit bulls. Before anybody, oh, I actually love pit bulls, but I also respect them and I understand their genetics, I understand their power, and I understand what they're capable of. And this is one of those things that is a pit bull trait. Not in all pit bulls. Some, it's in the genes, and some, because there's only just a little over 100. Well, I'd say 100 years ago they were doing it legally. Well, pit bull breeding and pit bull fighting is still happening to this day. And so when you're adopting a pit bull at the shelter, we don't know. We don't know. Maybe the mom and dad and many generations back were fighting dogs.
Sure.
Anyways, the point is, now I've seen it where the pit bull is looking at another dog going like the same intensity, the same drive that your German Shepherd maybe is looking at the squirrel. I need to chase that down and kill it. Thousands, tens of thousands of years of Mother Nature channeled into this drive. Like, why does your dog want to chase a ball? Prey drive. Why does your dog want to chase a squirrel? Prey drive. And so now they just tweaked it somehow and they got that prey drive. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Targeted towards other dogs. Very scary. And that's no warning. It's just they just want to get after that dog. And again, it's not only in pit bulls, but it's scary when you see that because something's wrong there. I find there's something wrong in that dog's mind. Now, is it manageable? Oh yeah, you can control it. Just like my dog Thanos wants to chase deer and squirrels and lizards. He has really high prey drive. We just taught him like you are not allowed to do that unless I give you permission. Sometimes I let him. I'm like, go ahead, go chase that deer. But we just control it and manage it. That's all.
Okay.
It's actually easier to control and manage that than it is a fear reactive dog.
Okay. Interesting.
Um, and I'll say one more thing. I know I talk a lot. You're seeing this a lot now. Pit bulls and other bully type breeds going after horses and people on the horses.
Horses, really? Okay.
Yeah, if you look it up, you say like type in pit bull horse,
Yeah.
you'll see it scary like horses, whether they got a carriage, there's always a rider on it. There's a couple instances with police officers on the horse,
Yeah.
and a random pit bull or bully type breed or whatever breed it is, it's coming out of the woodwork off leash and tearing into that horse.
Yep.
Why? Misplaced prey drive from those herding instincts from bull baiting back in the day, where they would send a couple of pit bulls and try to take down a bull. So
Wow.
when they see a horse or a cow, it channels this deep genetic trait, like I gotta bite that thing, just like they gotta bite a tennis ball, right?
I did not know
So,
that.
anyways,
Wow.
very dangerous. Yeah, very dangerous for the horse, very dangerous for the dog, and of course the riders and everybody else involved. Because once
Absolutely.
that now you got a 2,000-pound animal getting bit trying to save itself, and
Oh,
it's kicking, and it's scary.
wow. I'll be dang. So, for dog owners, just regular civilians here, one or two dogs in a house, what do you suggest? What's best for the dog and what's best for the owner?
But one versus two, like
Yeah.
what's better? Um, I try to stay very neutral on this with everything. There's not a right or wrong. I will say this though, this I'm very adamant about. If you're gonna have two dogs, do not get two at the same time. There's something called littermate syndrome,
Okay.
and I'll describe that in a minute. But we want when we get a dog, we're getting it because we want the dog for us. Man's best friend. Man's best friend. When you get a dog, it's because you want to incorporate it into your family in your pack, and the dog almost doesn't know it's a dog. It wants to be part of your family,
Hmm.
right? And it wants to go on a walk with you, and it wants to play fetch with you. And so sometimes what people do is they go, well, I get a dog, but I'm going to be at work a lot and I want him to have a buddy, so I'm going to
Yes.
get a second dog. and
Yeah.
and I get that. The problem with that though is like, well, did you get the dog to be part of your family, or did you get it to have like a farm animal? I'm not saying that weird, but like what ends up happening with littermate syndrome, and as I describe this, some of your listeners might be like, oh yeah, maybe that's why my dog acts that way. Dogs are naturally drawn towards each other for obvious reasons. And I would say when you have young puppies or young dogs, and there's more than one, meaning if there's no other dog around, you are that puppy's life. You feed it, you play with
Yep.
it, you pet it, you love it. It wants nothing more than to be with you. Unless you introduce another puppy, then that puppy almost wants nothing to do with you. Unless it's hungry and you got food, and then after it eats, all it wants to do is spend time playing with its litter mate, or it doesn't have to be a litter mate, any other dog. They're just naturally drawn towards it. And you will never be as fun and as exciting and enticing as another furry, four-legged creature that can run around and romp around on the ground. They love playing with each other, and that's great. It's wonderful. What littermate syndrome roughly is, and where it comes about, is you end up getting two puppies at the same time, whether they're from the same litter or not.
Yeah.
They basically raise each other. They become attached at the hip like Siamese twins. They eat together, they sleep together, they sleep in the crate together. They literally do everything together, and they become a pack. Very strong. There's something called pack drive.
Yeah.
You leave for work, they stay with the pack. Pack, pack, pack. Then what happens is if you ever try to separate them, they lose their minds, number one. Where'd my buddy go? I don't know how to eat without my buddy. I've
Oh,
never done
okay.
anything without my
Yeah. Yeah.
buddy. That's number one. But number two is I call it like zookeeper syndrome, basically, Charlie Brown syndrome. I have a lot of names for it just to describe it. Have you ever seen, and there's videos of this, that you could have wild wolves, but captive in like a zoo or some type of enclosure? And then the zookeeper can go in there. Absolutely, they can go in there. Wolves aren't trying to eat them. The wolves are like, yo, that guy's cool. That guy brings the food. And the
Sure.
zookeeper can come in. He can feed the wolves. He might even pet them a little bit. He can kind of sit down. He can hang out with them. And he won't get eaten. But he is not part of that pack. The wolves have formed a pack amongst themselves. You're just the zookeeper. And so that's what littermate syndrome can be in the
Ah.
extreme version is it's a pack amongst themselves. It could just be two dogs or be three or four dogs. And you're just a zookeeper. They like you. You feed them. They'll get their belly scratched by you, but you're not part of their pack. They don't respect you. You're not in their hierarchy. They don't listen. You know what I'm saying? And it goes on and on. But littermate syndrome is a real thing. So what I do suggest, having said all of that, get one dog. Raise and train that dog to be the best that it can be. And when it's around a year and a half, 2 years old, and is fully mentally mature and it's fully bonded with you and understands it's part of your pack, you can bring in another pack member. And
Okay.
then that young puppy is still needs to bond with the family and still spend limited time. It can spend time with the other adult dog, but don't let it be raised and trained only by that dog. You get kind of like that Tarzan syndrome, right? Like, why is Tarzan? Well, Tarzan was raised in the jungle by animals,
Right.
not humans. Let your puppy be raised by humans. So even if you did get two puppies at the same time, you have to avoid littermate syndrome by literally keeping them separate 99% of the time. Like, they can play 5 or 10 minutes a day, but everything else they do in life is human dog interaction, no dog on dog.
What I have seen is I've had friends that have had older dogs, say like 10, 11 years old, and they're like, we're thinking about getting a puppy or maybe like a 1 year old dog. How would A, do you recommend that? Or B, how would you integrate that?
It's a case by case basis, and there's like way too many factors. A lot of
Okay.
times with a 10, 11, 12-year old dog, very set in their ways, and they're not interested in a new pack member. That 10, 11, 12-year old dog could be super under socialized in terms of meeting other dogs,
Hmm.
can completely reject it. I was just speaking with a random lady at the cell phone store. We were talking about dog training. I
Yeah.
wonder why. And she goes, oh, I have a 2 year old. I think it was about a 2 year old dog. She goes, oh, I just brought in another dog, and man, I had to return the dog. It was like a shelter dog.
Yeah.
She's trying to do the right thing. She adopts a dog, and she goes, my female dog just rejected that dog almost from day one. And after a few days, they just wasn't a good fit. And I asked her, I said, hey, was the dog you adopted, was it another female? She goes, yeah, how'd you know that? I said, it's typical. If you're gonna if you have usually, it's not a hard fast rule. Everything we talk about when it comes to dog selection is just hedging your bet. That's all it is. It's
Sure.
not like it's like going to Vegas. There's smarter and stupider ways to play, but when it comes to getting another dog, you're better off getting a male and a female. But two dominant male, this makes a ton of sense. You got a fully intact, very dominant male, and then you bring in another fully intact, very dominant male.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Now, can it work? Yes, it can. Chances are, though, percentage wise, it's not a good recipe for success. You can make it work, but you might always have to be watching what happens when there's one piece of food on the ground and there's
Yeah.
two dominant dogs or one toy. Generally speak, now could you have a very submissive dog and a dominant dog and there's no issues? Yeah, but you're going to have a better chance, male and female, generally speaking. And the same with females. Two females, yeah, you could have two females get along perfectly. You could also have two females that want to murder each other any and every minute of the day.
Yeah.
So that's just food for thought. Generally try to get one of the opposite sex. Not to say you can't make it work the other way, just you're going to have to put in maybe a little more time and effort.
Yeah. We had a Canaan dog. I got a Canaan dog, and she was a female. She was pretty submissive. Took her to Petco for dog training, all that good stuff. And the gal that was a dog trainer, we became friends with, and she did rescues.
Hmm.
And she had a dog that was about a year old. It was a female. And she said, yeah, it's an Australian cattle dog. And I'm like, okay, we're thinking about getting a second dog. By now, Mocha was about 9 months, maybe close to a year old. And it's like, all right, maybe it's time to introduce another dog. And this female, oh my God, they got into like life and death battles.
Hmm.
And I'm just, I looked at my ex-wife and I'm just like, you know, Mocha was here first. She's the queen.
Yeah.
This other dog will go back to the trainer, and this would be a good dog for, no other dogs in the house. She was very dominant. And she wasn't an Australian cattle. She was like 90% Rottweiler.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, okay. I mean, you could just tell. And
Yeah.
and I said, you know what, this ain't working. I don't want a dead dog, because she was going for the throat.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
ugly, and
Yep.
then I went out and bought a male Canaan dog, and
Okay.
he was about 4 or 5 months old. And they had one, I think it was over a piece of food or something. They had one, let's say, discussion.
Yeah.
And she told him which way the wind blew. And
Yep.
after that, they led very long, happy, healthy lives together.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what worked in your favor was female and male. Great. So we just hedged our bet. Then the fact that it was only 4 or 5 months old, oh, it's a puppy. Like, it's still fresh and impressionable, you
Yep.
know. Uh, and 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 I was going to tell you, like, I would have made a bet when you said they got in their little spat and want to sort it out. Man, 9 times out of 10, the female. The
Oh,
female goes to roost if it's a strong, dominant female, right?
yeah.
We often forget that everyone thinks wolf packs are run by the alpha male. They're actually run by the alpha female. She chooses who the alpha male is,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, that's one of those scenarios where the king might run the pack, but the queen runs the king.
Yeah.
So the queen is in charge, man. You know where that term bitch comes from? It's not to be rude. It's where does it
Right.
come from? A strong, tough female dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that was
Anyhow,
my experience. So, okay. Strongest muscles on a dog. And I got this from one of our trainers, and she said it was the jaw and the neck. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, the neck for sure. Um, we got to remember where these dogs come from. Wolves. So wolves can run up to 30, 35 miles an hour and take down, let's say, an elk or something two, three, four times its size. They can run at 30, 35 miles an hour, launch in the air, grab a prey item, and hang on. And now you see this where this really plays out now is in protection sports. We got these Malinois running full freaking speed. It's like getting hit by a car, and they take the bite here, so their head stops and their body keeps going, and they're taking guys to the ground. It's wild. Like, it's like, how did their neck not snap
Yeah.
in two? All that power in their neck for sure. And
Yeah.
they're just pound for pound. I was just listening to a podcast the other day. We were talking about like chimpanzees. Pound for pound, like I might be two or three times the size of a chimpanzee. I am not messing with a chimpanzee. They'll literally can rip your arms off. They're
Oh,
so
yeah.
strong.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
Okay.
dogs are the same way in the sense of, I'm 215 pounds. A 120 pound dog is a lot of dog for me.
Okay.
I can handle bigger dogs, but it's more technique than strength at that point.
Sure.
And so people forget about that. So again, I'm not saying like a 120 pound woman can't control a 160 pound boar bull. With proper training, you could get it done. But if you took an untrained dog and someone who didn't know what they were doing, and I just attached a harness to a dog, it doesn't have to be 160 pounds, an 80-pound Rottweiler, name the breed, it doesn't matter. Generally speaking, most people in that size range, 120, 130, 140 pounds, would have a very hard time holding back an 80-pound dog from going after something it wanted. You see it all the time. People just wiping out, getting drugged down the
Right.
street,
Yeah.
holding
That's
on to their dog that's taking them for a ride. So I'm just trying to say, like, pound for pound, I don't want to, I'm sure they've done studies on it, but they're probably twice as powerful as a human pound for pound. You know what I mean?
I all day long. Now, watching your videos, I have seen you use clickers, treats, regular and premium, shock collars, e-collar, pincher, choker, you know, when and I know this is a very vague, general question, and we're kind of running out of time. So, when is it appropriate to use all these things, or is it like a progression thing or case by case scenario?
All of the above. You really
Okay.
hit the nail on the head. So the style of training we do is what we call balance training. Every single dog trainer on the planet would fall into one of three categories. Positive only training, which is like this cult following that's been around for the last 20 years, what you see in pet stores and on the
Yeah.
internet, and clickers and treats, and everything's hugs, kisses, and fairy tale wonderland dreams. Fantastic way to teach a dog something new. Will absolutely do nothing for you when those natural drives kick in. Defensive drives, prey drive. Let's say that pit bull is now trying to go after the horse. I don't care what treat you pull out of your pocket. That pit bull doesn't care about it. That German shepherd that wants to go after the squirrel, or that fear reactive, name the breed, that is terrified and once thinks it's about to get into a fight with the other dog in the neighborhood. There is not a treat or toy you can pull out of your pocket to disengage that dog from that stress, right?
Okay.
It's to be like me coming up to you, Patrick, saying like, you're in the fight for your life. You think you're about to get into a fist fight. You're in the middle of whatever. And I'm like, oh, do you want a cheeseburger? You're not thinking about cheeseburger when you're in a fight or flight
Right.
mind, right? So that's where positive only training fails. Again, wonderful at teaching, horrible at reliability. On
Okay.
the other end of the spectrum is old school training. It's also known as compulsion training, crank and yank training, escape and avoidance training. All of these different training methods have different names. But that, generally speaking, uses no treats, no toys, no motivation. It's very old school training. It's actually what we used to do with police dogs back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. We didn't know any better. It was, you have to do it or else. I'll just give you a simple example. You hook a leash to a dog, and the dog, say, doesn't want to go in the car. Mind you, you can bring all the treats. You're like, hey, you want a treat?
Yeah.
The dog's like, no, I ain't getting in the car. I don't care about the hot dog. Well, what's your resort? You might have to resort to good old fashioned, hey, I'm going to grab the leash and I'm going to pull as hard as I need to pull until you figure out, like, the only way to turn the pressure off, by the way, that's the name of the game, pressure on, pressure off, is to go in the car. If you go in the car, I'll turn the pressure off. Now, that's the two. Well, the third one is balance training, which is the best of both worlds. We will show the dog hundreds and thousands of reps how to do something, such as a sit or a down or recall. And then, like you had mentioned, we slowly and gradually introduce compulsion training to teach them that not only can you and should you come over to me for a recall because I'll give you a treat, but you must. Because if you don't do it, there is a swift and severe consequence for failure to comply. We just prep them for that correction. We prep them for it so that they understand what the pressure is and, more importantly, how to turn it off. So
Okay.
now we go back to that same example. We have that pit bull that wants to go after the horse, the German Shepherd that wants to go after the squirrel, or the leash reactive dog that's just wants to fight every dog it sees, you name it. Now, when I tell the dog, no, don't do that, come back into a position of obedience, heel, sit, down, stay, recall, whatever it is, and they choose not to comply, we now have tools and techniques available to let the dog know in no uncertain terms, you're making a very big mistake, and we need you to correct that mistake. Now, the idea is the more you do this, the more you use these tools and training techniques, both in reps, meaning consistency, and severity, you could call it, the faster the dog learns not to screw around.
Okay.
And so next time it sees the horse, it goes, man, I'd really like to chase that horse, but yeah, dad doesn't like me doing that. I'd rather hang out with you. And the moment it does that, guess what? We're right back to paying them, going, hey, that's a good decision. Because you're not chasing the horse, here's your pet, here's your praise, here's your food, here's your toy. So it all comes back. So we say, we'll teach you with the food, and then we will use these tools and techniques to always guide you back to doing the right
Okay.
thing.
So it's
Yeah.
correcting. Okay. Makes
Yep.
sense.
And hey, I'll say it a different way. It's how we raise our kids, or how we should be. If you do
Yes.
good, I'll pay you. If you mess up, I'm going to let you know you're messing up so you can go back to doing the right thing.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah,
that's all it
absolutely.
is. Yin and yang, in other words, balance training. And then I'm kind of using this term now, full spectrum, because some dogs need a 50-50 balance. Some need a 90-10 balance, one way or the other way. You know, some do great with food. Some could care less about food. And so every dog is different, and we customize it, as every owner should, to the individual dog and play to their strengths and fix their weaknesses. So,
Sounds good.
and yeah, and it's literally whatever it takes.
Yeah.
You know, whatever we can do to make that dog excel.
Okay. Very good. Now, I'm out walking I used to, God rest his soul, I had to put down our little Chihuahua rat terrier a couple months ago, and he thought he was a pit bull. He was a great dog. I never thought I'd like a small dog. I always had big dogs, and he was great. But, always take him for walks, and there was a pit bull in the neighborhood that broke loose from his leash, and he started charging. So, I scooped him up right away, and thankfully the human came running over and barely in the nick of time was able to control the dog and get him back. Say that wasn't going to happen. What's a good way to break up either a dog fight or a dog attacking me?
Sure. So, and we do a lot of these reviews on our channel. So it's just, there's no end of these types of videos. Dogs getting
Yep.
off leash, dogs attacking humans, dogs attacking dogs, blah, 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 blah. So, a couple things. First thing, if you can, I mean, there's contradictions and everything in dog training. Look, if you can run away, and there's videos of that, get up on a car, jump a fence, get back in your house, do it. That being said, if that's not an option, and what I was thinking, as you were describing, I've seen this happen so many times. We pick up the small dog and then we play this keep away game. Imagine that owner didn't come over, you would be playing keep away, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
blame you for it. As the dog comes up on your left, you're spinning and moving away. All you're doing is amplifying prey drive. So, keep away. Now, so it doesn't diminish the drive. The dog's not going to just give up. These dogs don't have quit. I mean, literally
Right.
just running across the street to handle business. It's not going to just give up because you're playing keep away. It actually just makes it want it more. All I'm getting at is we have to now go from defense to offense. Offense. What do I mean? I don't care what you got to use. You got to get as big and as bad as you can, as best you can. And sometimes you can stop that dog from charging you just by getting big and bad, loud. Just look as big as you can, yell, and if you got to use physical force, you got to do what you got to do to protect yourself and others. But if you play a victim, if you act like a prey item, they're going to be more of a predator. But what that predator doesn't want to do is deal with another predator. Oh, and now you flip the game on them. So what I'm getting at is, if you can get away, get away. But if you can't, you got to defend yourself. And the bigger and badder you are, the less likely that dog's going to want to tango with you. And then if dogs are biting you, or really have latched on, and you see these, man, you see situations where a dog has got a full mouth grip on another dog,
Yeah.
and they're not letting go for anything. The only way you get that dog to let go, I mean, you can hit him in the head with a stick. You see people hitting them with hoses, dumping milk on them. I've seen all kinds of stuff, spraying them with Raid cans, Windex. When you have a dog that's determined like that, again, thousands to 10,000 years of prey drive saying bite
Right.
and hold and don't let go. The only way you get that dog to let go is to choke him off. Just like in an MMA fight. How do they end a lot of MMA fights? The guy gets choked out. Now, how do you
Yeah.
do that? Most dogs are wearing a collar. You grab that collar, lift up and hold. That's it. It's the same way we choke police dogs off of bites a lot of times.
Okay.
I've seen people put dogs in headlocks. I don't recommend that. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but you're putting yourself very close to that dog's mouth.
Yeah. There's a lot of
And
teeth
the
flying.
other
Yeah.
thing, yeah, but there's almost always a leash around. I wish I had one on me. I almost always have one
Yeah.
handy, but every leash can be converted into um,
A collar.
basically a leash and collar. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you could always
Absolutely.
take your leash, loop it through, and in a jiffy, you now have a collar. You wrap that over the dog's neck, or you loop it around their neck, and you lift and hold. And it's the same concept. You lift and hold. And even if you did it horribly, you can probably get that dog to let go in 10 or 15, maybe 30 seconds. If you do it right, you can get the dog to let go in about 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay.
So it's you just restrict airway and blood flow, and it
Well,
makes the dog, for a number of reasons, they quit. They, oh well, I'd like to hold on, but I can't breathe. So
yeah, makes total sense.
yeah.
We all have jobs, go on vacation, and we're not always able to have our dog with us. So what should we be doing with our dogs? And what would you look for in a kennel or a dog sitter?
Yeah, so experience matters. Obviously, a good resume, referrals, or I should say references. Those 5-star reviews. Um, you always take a gamble anytime you leave your dog in the care of another. Was just watching an incident just a few days ago down in Martin County, which is just a county north of West Palm Beach, Florida. And this woman has been a board and train trainer for like a decade and has killed, they don't even know how many dogs, at least
Oh,
6 documented cases of dogs dying in her custody. And
that's
they thought it was
terrible.
all happenstance until they finally did a necropsy on one of the dogs and found out that the dog had been beaten and choked and all kinds of
Oh,
stuff. So I don't want to put the fear in anybody. I'm just telling you,
yeah.
like with anything, just like with police officers, there's heroes and there's zeros. Just like with dog trainers, pet sitters, boarding, you're going to have heroes and you're going to have zeros and everything in between. What I would suggest is training, 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 training. If your dog is super well trained, you'll be more than likely able to take them here, there, and everywhere. Every dog that we train or that our clients train are trained to a service dog level, meaning they can go anywhere and everywhere with you because they're well behaved. Now, your dog's a wild animal, you can't go into a restaurant with it. If your dog's a wild animal, you don't want to take it on vacation or in your
Right.
car into a hotel room. They're not going to be wanted or allowed. A lot of places are dog friendly now. But again, if we get the training. Now, having said all of that, if you have the right training, you're going to have people wanting to watch your dog. You might even have to pay for it. They're like, oh, the Rocco, the well-trained whatever, I'd love to have him come to my house and this and that. So
Okay.
I think you're usually better off maybe with someone coming to your house if the dog is in a known safe environment. You start taking your dog to a boarding facility. It's usually going to be cramped in a cage. There's going to be more potential for dog on dog interactions, not always the best ones. And there could be more likelihood to catch a disease, kennel
Yeah.
cough, things like that just happen. Um, but if you have a well trained dog and you have a good connection with someone local to you that's also a trainer, it's a breeze for us. We love taking in dogs we've trained already. It's not even work, man. It's like we get to reunited because that dog's fully trained. They're welcome at our home anytime, and it's just a party for them. It's a vacation because it's like we're their home away from home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they have a tremendous amount of freedom because they're well trained. Like if you go get the difference with a dog that comes in our board and train program on day one It's like Marine Corps boot camp. Like, you have no freedoms because you don't even know how to walk on a leash. You're a wild animal. Then by the time we progress, week 3, week 4, off leash freedom. Here, there, and everywhere. Take them everywhere with us. They need that exposure.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess what I'm getting at, man, if you can get a well trained dog, opportunities just open up for you and the dog.
That makes total sense. I know we're winding down here and I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you for hours and hours. Yeah, biggest training mistakes you see people make with their new dogs or even their older dogs. And can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Yeah, so you can teach an old dog new tricks. It's just a little harder. I always use the Tiger Woods example. Tiger Woods is as good as he is because he had a golf club in his hand since about 3 years old. Now, if you take me at 41 years old and say, Garrett, I'm going to teach you how to play golf, I don't care how much time and effort you put into it. I will never be as good as Tiger Woods or anything
Right.
close to it. Right. So the younger you can get a hold of a puppy or a dog, the better. So a lot of people wait to train their dogs. Well, when he's 1 or 2 years old. No, 2 years old is, generally speaking, depending upon the breed, a fully mentally, physically immature dog, meaning it's an adult. Not saying you can't train a 2-year-old dog. It's just not like training an 8, 10, 12-week-old dog. They're like little sponges. So the biggest mistake is people waiting. When training starts? Training honestly starts before you even get your dog, because you got to have done your research, what style of training you're going to use, and have the right equipment so that literally as soon as that puppy enters your home, it's training. Whether it knows it or not, it's training. And every time you feed that dog is a missed training opportunity. Every time you walk that dog is a training opportunity. And I'll just give you one example. If you do everything right, and we have a program that teaches this, you can potty train a puppy in as little as 48 hours. It's life-saving. That's like life-changing.
48 hours. How do you do that? That really, okay.
Yeah,
Lay it on us.
it's just having a system. Same thing. It's just a training system and a schedule. And dogs are unbelievably routine animals. They're ritualistic. They love their routines and habits. They just
Yeah,
love their habits. Very habitual creatures.
they are.
So all we do is, how long does it take to form a habit? Not very long at all,
Right.
So you can form the habit that going outside to pee is the way to go. And once they know that, that's the only way that's like all they want to do. They almost get key fear of peeing in the house because it's like, I don't pee on the carpet. So the trick is never here's one of the trade secrets. If you don't want your dog to pee on the carpet, never let them pee on the carpet, ever. Just don't let them do it. If you want your kids not to pick up smoking, just don't let them smoke cigarettes.
Right.
Just don't let them do it. It only takes 1 or 2 drags on a cigarette, maybe, that nicotine hits their system and whatever. Now we have a habit. So the idea is, we've had some of the best success with what we call our raise and train programs. The dog goes straight from the breeder to us at 8 weeks old. And for 3 months, all we do is raise it, train it, socialize it, and tremendous success. These are our Tiger Woods. Why? We're teaching them golf at 3 years old.
Okay.
We're teaching them how to be a good dog from 8 weeks old to 5 months old. At 5 months old, this dog is turnkey and ready for anything life wants to throw at it. But it's never too late. It's never too late. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, but training is the way, and then getting the right trainer or training system.
Okay.
And that's where we come in. We have the best board and train program in the world, and the best online training programs, which are modeled after our board and train programs. You literally see how, behind the scenes, every single step of the way, how we're training $20,000 board and train dogs for our VIP clients. You'll see their dogs and you see every single step of the way. We actually have a couple of our latest courses show us taking 3-month-old puppies, and you see every single training session from the start of training where they don't know anything to the very final training when they're take home. And it's like, all you got to do is model your training after that. And tremendous success you're going to have, because it's not just the online courses. Our support staff is there 24/7.
Okay.
Whatever question you have, we do weekly lives. We answer any and every question our customers have, because it's our mission to make sure they get their dog across the finish line and have the best trained dog in their entire town. That's what we do.
As far as potty training, I know I'm going back to that because that's like a huge heartburn for dog owners, potty training puppies. And the way I did it, and I forget where I learned this, was I attached the leash to my belt and I took off of work for like 3 or 4 days. It's like you got a new dog, either a puppy or younger dog. And it's like my ex-wife was looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, I'm taking off. This is my, like project. This is my mission. Yep. He's going to be potty trained. And it's like, they give a little clue, like the little circles or whatever. And if he's attached to me, I see that. And as soon as he starts doing that, I would rush him outside. and it's
Yep.
like boom,
That's
then you
absolutely one of the keys to success. One of the things we teach in our courses is your puppy is either literally attached at the hip to you, they have a
yep,
leash on and you're
that's what
holding
I
it, or
did.
it's strapped to you. That's one technique. But crate training, because you can't always have the dog attached to you. You might
Right.
need to, I don't know, make dinner or something.
Sure.
Then you take it out to pee, you bring it back in, you put it in the crate just for a little bit until you're ready to take it out again. After dinner, take it back out, and same thing. And so, but it goes back to that idea, and that's why maybe it worked for you. You got 2, 3, 4 days worth of perfection. The dog already is now peed outside, I don't know, 10 times a day over 4 days. That's 40 pees and poops outside,
Yep.
cumulative. You have a record. You got a 40-0 record. It's hard to beat that,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
But where people go wrong is they're not doing these things. They're not following we have a potty training schedule. We have a whole system, because it's
Okay.
not just one thing. It's like holistic, if you will.
Cool.
And then 48 hours later, you have that 30 and 40-0 record, and it's smooth sailing. It's we got it down to a science.
That's awesome.
But that's the idea. Set them up for success. That's all we do. Show them the way.
And
Show
then
them now, if you don't do it, just imagine, bring a puppy home, you have it for a week, and like half the time it has an accident in the house and half the time it poops outside. Well, you know what your record looks like? It's like 30 and 30.
yeah.
It's not, it's the dog has picked up both habits. It's okay to pee outside, it's okay to pee inside. And for the love of God, stop using pee pads, you folks out there, because now what's your record? You use pee pads in your house for 6 months. Your dog's never peed outside. It's only peed on a pee pad in your living room.
Ugh.
Your record is 1,000-0 in the living room.
Yeah.
Now try to get that dog to pee outside. They don't know how to pee outside.
Right. Exactly. Best dog food and brand for like your dog for like equipment. Do you have favorites?
Yeah, we have one that we use, but it's not the best dog food. It's just best for training.
Okay.
But I'd encourage them to check out our course, because we have it depends on so many factors. I don't
Okay.
want to just give a
Yeah, I
blanket
used to
statement.
use Blue Buffalo. That's
Sure,
what I
it's a
I mean,
decent brand.
some of these dog foods look better than the food that I eat, like the fresh stuff that's in the refrigerator and stuff. I'm like, damn, I'm getting hungry looking at it.
Oh, it's expensive. Yeah, $5, $6 a pound.
All
It's crazy.
right, let's start winding this down. I'm going to ask you
Sure.
what I usually do with cops. What would you do if one of your kids says, "Hey, Dad, I want to be a cop"? What are you going to say?
Disown them. No, I don't know.
Sorry,
I
you're
think
on
I
your
would.
own.
Yeah, I have 2 young girls and I love them to death. I would support them in anything they wanted to do, but it's like literally my life's mission to make them an entrepreneur, a business owner, work for themselves. It took me
Okay.
40 years basically to figure that out. And I don't think this is not the time. It's a horrible time to be a police officer now with politics. Now it's interesting. I was just had this conversation with that guy I told you about, Mike Foreman, 50 years, and he and
Yeah.
I kind of went back and forth on it. I would not advise anyone to be a police officer right now. It's very scary times with the judgment, and it's a very hard job. And I don't think it's ever been harder to be a police officer than it is right now. Now, having said that, Mike Foreman all but reached across the table and slapped me. And he goes, "That's all the more reason why we need to have the best men and women that we can to be police officers now, to help turn the tide and set the record straight." And it's a very bold statement that he made, and like I hear what he's saying, but at the same time, like I don't know, go in the military, yes, be a police officer, man, it's scary out there.
Yeah,
You
it
could do
is.
everything right and lose your job, lose your pension, and go to prison
Oof,
doing your job,
that's
and
scary.
it's scary, yeah.
All right. What advice would you give someone who wants to be a canine cop? How should they
Okay,
prepare themselves?
yeah, perfect. So all you have to do, I promise you, this is the secret to success. Go out, show up, be there, put in your time both on and off duty. Show up on those training Wednesdays and volunteer your time and your sweat, and you will fast track your way in. Because when selection time comes and the tryouts come, you've spent 6 months, blood, sweat, and tears with them. You've proven yourself. And then there's just this guy that just applied yesterday who hasn't put in anything. Chances are they're going to pick you. That's the way in. You don't need to go out. They actually don't want you to go out and get your own training. And hey, I train my own dog. And hey, I have a Belgian Malinois at home. You come in kind of acting like a know-it-all, and that's going to turn them off. They want
Okay.
someone coming in who either doesn't know anything, or even if you do know a little something, pretend like you don't know anything.
Hmm.
And they want humble and they want hardworking, and that's the way in. You're almost a guarantee if you can show up and be the guy that volunteers to get in the bite suit and be a team player.
Very good. So you have a huge media presence, and I mean huge. How did you do it? How did you build that from point A to point Z? And we talked a little bit about it. You start out, it's like, hey, here's my phone. I'm just gonna start, like videotaping our training session or whatever. And what does it look like today? How how purposeful are you? It's like, hey, I've got to get X amount of pieces of content out to these different channels. How do you do it? What's the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, literally, it was me and my cell phone and my wife, and I was my own editor. And we didn't even have editing software. I think it was like editing on my phone, if there was even any editing at all.
Right.
No microphone, nothing. And then literally, it's just day after day, week after week, looking at what was going on and just continual improvement, looking at other channels, emulating them, or taking best practices, figuring out what was better gear. And it's not even about the gear. Like, you can do so much now with just an iPhone and a
Oh,
microphone. You
all
can
day long.
crush it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's channels out there with millions of followers done completely shot on iPhones and
Yep.
and edited on an iPhone. So it can be done. So it's just about really putting in the work. No channel on earth, I don't care if you're the biggest celebrity in the world, I don't think you could ever amass, say, 1 million followers on YouTube putting out one video or two videos. You're going to have to put in the work. And the more work it's just like with anything, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and not be afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid to get out there and do it. I was
Right.
talking to a gentleman the other day. He's in the horse training world. He's very competent at horse training. He's like a horse whisperer. And we're connected through a mutual friend. And he's
Yeah.
like, Garrett, how do I get big on social media? I'm like, bro, I've seen, because he puts content out. I was like, man, but who are you? I don't know who you are. You know why I don't know who you are? Because you're always behind the camera filming something and putting music on top. You could be
Oh.
anybody. Anybody can do that. I want to know you, what makes you special. He goes, yeah, but I don't like being in front of the camera. And I'm like, well, then you'll never
Mm.
be anybody, because I'll never know who you are or anything about you. But
Yeah,
you got to be.
because you put it out there because you have yourself. I've seen your wife, I've seen your kids, I've seen, it's like, you're at your house, you're training, your podcast studio, whatever. It's all, nothing is to the imagination. We know who you are.
This was going to say, like, having not met me before, you could say by the time you met me, you kind of already know me, would be the plan. Like, you know what I
Yep.
mean? So, but yeah, that's part of it. You just got to put yourself out there. And some people are afraid of the criticism, but it's like, you're out there anyways, right? Like, you go out to the supermarket, you go to work every day, people see you when you talk to people, and there's people who like you and there's people who just don't like you. It's going to be the same. It's just amplified. More people will like you, and there may be more people who just don't like you, and that's fine. That's why God invented the ban button. He's up, you know, and don't
So
get, and don't read the comments,
do you
because there's,
have like a goal in your mind? I am going to put out 20 pieces of content today.
oh yeah, yeah, we have we put out 6 shorts a week minimum, and try to put out at least 1 to 2 long forms a week minimum. We just opened up a brand new second channel, mostly for the podcast.
Yeah.
A lot of police breakdown videos, police canine breakdown videos, where 90% of the time we're just praising the amazing efforts of the men and women in law enforcement. And then there's times where it's like, what the hell were you thinking? And we got
Right.
to call it what it is. But it's not even 90%, it's 99%. We're singing their praises, but there's always these strange outliers where you're like scratching your head, like, what happened here? And
Right.
so
Right.
we'll lose all our credibility if we're saying they did a great job and it was a catastrophe.
Right. Right.
But even if it's a catastrophe, we hopefully find a way to say, like, well, you know,
Do you
at
do
least
you
they were pleasant when.
do you farm
What?
out any of this work, like for the editing and posting and all that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've grown from just me and my wife and a cell phone to now it's thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment, cameras, lighting, mics, sets. And I now have a full-time videographer, a full-time social media manager,
Okay.
three most full-time editors. We're looking for a fourth editor. Yeah, it's a full-on vertical of our business now.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm a huge fan of Gary Vanderchuck, Gary V.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he's like, you got to put out like 10 pieces of content a day and blast it to everything.
yeah. He's not wrong. I mean, I don't know about 10 pieces, but it'll just get you there
Yeah.
faster. You'll learn faster, the learning curve. But yeah, you got to do
Right.
the work. Um, yeah, you just got to put it out there.
All right,
Uh,
cool.
but there is
S-
also, 10 pieces of crap content versus one pieces of more polished content. I'll lean more towards the one piece of polished content.
Absolutely. Do we have time for a couple of Facebook questions
Yeah,
or
please.
not?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. I have a Cops and Writers Facebook group, about 7,500 people in there, mostly writers, but I have cops from like all over the world, actually. Linda Ronke asks, what about tracking if the person goes into a sewer?
The dogs will do the work. They don't care. It's
So the
nasty
sewer
for the
smell
handler.
wouldn't throw them off?
No, you can't mask it. No, not
Okay.
really. I mean, there's a cool video out there. You guys should try to look for it. Sheriff's Office, Broward County Sheriff's Office. They bring a
Yeah.
bloodhound out and they deploy the bloodhound, and the dog tracks and finds and what we call sources.
Yeah.
He goes into the lake and is swimming in a circle. He's swimming in a circle because there's a diver.
Oh my
The
God.
diver's hiding from him. They just wanted to show you the same. They have cadaver dogs
Yeah.
that can
Yeah.
find a body in the water. How do they do it? Because gases from you breathing, just
Oh,
coming off your person, and they float to the surface, and the dog can still find you. Like the dog will find you anywhere and everywhere. It's very hard to mask the human scent.
all
Just
right.
can't do it.
She asks another question. If a baby wrapped in a blanket was put inside a large zipped waterproof carryall and carried across a small park, would the canine be able to track it?
Weird question, but
Yeah. So I would say
yes and
yes.
no. Yes
Oh,
and no.
okay.
Like they probably wouldn't be tracking the baby. Like if it was truly smell proof, like let's call it airtight. If it was
Yeah.
an airtight container, no, the dog wouldn't be able to track like the scent cone of that object, but they could track the person that was walking.
Okay.
They could
Sure. Yeah.
potentially track, the broken vegetation. Like they would still be onto something.
Sure.
And it's very hard to get fully airproof.
Okay.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
look
And
what these guys go through with the cartels. Like they do all
yeah.
kinds of stuff to try
Oh, I
to
know. Coffee.
vacuum seal, but
Yeah.
it's hard, man, because there's residue. The smell of actually whoever wrapped the baby and put it in the suitcase, there's the smell of the baby residue on the outside of the suitcase. They could
Sure.
smell that. Yep.
Okay. Nathan Bush asks, what is the predominant language used in training canines and the typical breeds? We went through the breeds. Language?
German, Dutch, French, because again, we're importing them from Europe, and then English commands.
Yeah. I also heard Hebrew for some.
No, that I haven't heard, but hey,
Yeah. Hebrew.
nothing surprises me. Yeah.
Yep.
And then honestly, I'll be honest with you. We're police officers. We're not linguists.
Yeah.
So we don't really speak that great German or French. So I've heard so many weird variations of the same word, and then taking the word like plots means down in German.
Right.
Actually, it means place. Well, we've distorted it to mean down. But then I
Oh,
just the other day I was training with someone and seeing something online. They use plots for recall, and I was checking with a German speaker, and they're like,
really?
"Plots does nothing to do with recall." I'm like, "Well, they're
Right.
using it for that." So it doesn't really matter. I mean, in the end, the dog doesn't know what. There's dogs that are trained on numbers. 1 is sit, 2 is down, 3 is here. Whatever you like.
All right. Now, I know you just started the podcast,
Mm,
and it's the Garret Wing podcast,
yes,
YouTube
sir.
right now, and then it's going to be going off to all the different platforms. When's the book coming out? You got to have a book.
I know. I know. It's literally on the list. We have a it's just time. It's a matter of time, finding the time. But
Right.
yeah, we already have a couple of things that we have in mind to put out. Mostly focused around how to train your dog, like how to potty
Absolutely.
train your dog. That'll be a chapter.
Yeah.
That.
But okay,
But yeah,
good to know about that. So let's wrap this up. Again, I apologize for running over,
no,
but
it's my
I
pleasure. I love
thought,
talking shop. I love it.
yeah, it's a lot of fun talking to you. You know, where can people find out more about you and your work? Where do they go?
American Standard Dog Training. That's where you're going to find us. You can Google it, YouTube it, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're everywhere. American Standard Dog Training.
Okay.
And then our online courses are DIYK9.com, as in do it yourself dog training. So DIYK9.com, that's where our amazing industry leading online training courses are. And then you just mentioned it. Our latest and greatest thing that we're working on is our second channel, Garret Wing Show, which is podcasts with great guests, mostly law enforcement and canine related, but we'll expand from there. And also police, kind of current affairs breakdowns, police shootings, police incidents,
Mm.
kind of reviewing them and giving my opinion on it based on all whatever, just my background and experience,
Yeah,
where I can weigh in, and usually more than anything, just really just like to shed the light on how tough of a job, you know, they have. And
absolutely.
that we got to give them more respect, because god dang, man, just it's nonstop videos of these officers getting shot, stabbed, beat up,
Oh,
dogs getting shot, dogs getting stabbed. It's a damn tough job.
it sure
Damn
is.
tough.
Well, Garrett, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and thanks to everybody that was listening. Really appreciate it.